Hey everyone, welcome to FanFic Canon. Thanks for hitting play. I'm thrilled to bring this fan-made story to life for you. If you enjoy the ride and want more narrated fanfics, smash, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss an episode. And if you want audiobook of a novel of your choice, join my Patreon. Request any title that's freely available online, and I'll produce a full narration just for you. Now, let's dive into today's adventure.
An intentional miss than a perfect strike, thought grimly. His cursed technique, he's storing the power from failed hits and releasing it in one devastating blow. His body glowed faintly in the aftermath of Round Deer's healing. This effect had closed most of his wounds, but the strain on his energy was obvious. Once he dismissed it, the pressure on his body eased, yet his reserves were dangerously low. The dream realm's suppression of cursed energy was taking its toll. Across from him stepped through a collapsed wall. His figure was lean, almost unimposing, but the malevolent aura around him bent the air. "How many people have you killed?" asked quietly. His grin was sharp. "You sorcerers always ask that, as if the number matters, let's say 5,000 or 6,000. I stopped counting after the first few thousand. There are so many insects in this city, it's easy." He turned his gaze toward the distant survivors huddled behind the rubble. "And when I finish this little game, I'll be the king of the new world." The ground cracked as he lunged forward. Read the movement instantly, wanted him to dodge. Each evasion would feed power into the next blow. He couldn't play that game. He formed a hand seal, shadows rippled beneath his feet. Rabbit escape. Dozens of small erupted from the darkness, darting in every direction. One materialized midair, colliding with his fist and halting his momentum just long enough for to retreat. He grabbed a chunk of debris and hurled it. The projectile whistled through the air but missed. His eyes flicked toward, amused. "Quick learner, most don't live long enough to figure out my technique." His grin widened. "Fine, phase one's over, let's move on." This time he didn't hold back, his movements blurred. Every strike came faster, sharper, no longer feints but killing blows. Rabbit escape flooded the area, intercepting him again and again, but the cost of maintaining so many was draining strength. He couldn't keep defending forever. He needed a decisive move, but nothing he had could land a finishing hit. "Should I let him kill me here?" he thought bitterly. If death in the dream realm wasn't permanent, revival could restore his energy. Risky, but maybe his only shot. Sensed his hesitation. He broke through the rabbit swarm and slammed a heavy punch into his ribs. Pain exploded through him as he hit the ground, coughing blood. "Go ahead," sneered. "End it yourself or let me do it. Doesn't matter, you've already lost." Then his expression froze. A crimson beam tore across the sky, silent but blinding. The blast hit square in the chest, drilling through him and several buildings behind him. His body dropped, a smoking hole where his torso had been. "Oh, what the hell?" he croaked. Dust cleared, a tall figure strode forward, white hair catching the light, hands in his pockets, blue eyes unreadable. A whispered, relief flooding his chest. Smiled faintly. "Finish him." Nodded, summoning a to deliver the final strike, managed a broken laugh. "I'll come back, stronger next time." Then he was gone. A clapped shoulder. "Good timing, huh? Another second and I'd be scraping what's left of you off the pavement." Then with a teasing spark in his tone, "Want to hear something good? Guess who I found." A blinked. "Who?" A pointed down the road. "See for yourself." A familiar figure ran toward them, sunlight catching in her hair. For a moment couldn't breathe. She threw her arms around him. He froze, then hugged her back tightly. "I'm sorry," he whispered. She smiled, brushing his hair back. "Don't be, I should be the one apologizing. You've always worried too much." Her warmth was real, so real it hurt. "You haven't changed," she said softly. "It's like we were never apart." She looked around the ruined street. "Where's San? I thought he'd be here." Smiled faintly. He wanted to but stopped him, said if we didn't find you soon, would torn the barrier apart himself. laughed quietly, still as stubborn as ever. Called from a distance, all right, reunion over. Let's move before gets any ideas about storming in. Took's hand and nodded. Let's go, you're safe now, no more suffering. Hadn't expected to see here. No battlefield, no chaos, just an empty open-air stadium, eerily still, like a reunion that didn't belong in this century. From the moment he'd stepped into the barrier, something had felt wrong. The entire path was silent. No ancient sorcerers, no civilians. The city itself felt abandoned, just cursed spirits drifting in the air like carrion birds circling an old. Inside the stadium, 3 groups waited. On one side stood and assigned to stabilize this section of the barrier. Opposite them were 3 strangers, 2 men and a woman. The woman's once refined face was split by a cruel scar. Beside her stood a hulking man with veins like cables and a slim, lazy-eyed man who wore a grin that didn't reach his eyes. And a short distance away, separate from everyone, leaned another figure, a calm man with 2 distinctive hair buns resting lightly on an iron staff. It said with a faint sigh, resting her axe on her shoulder, "You're faster than I expected. With the way this mission's turned chaotic, I'd say you've earned a bonus." She didn't say it aloud, but seeing him here, the boy who'd once trained under gave her a rare sense of reassurance. And visibly relaxed, too. The tension in the air had been palpable, both sides had been seconds away from fighting. Only survival had frozen the conflict in place. The bun-haired man had stopped his aggression, watching quietly. The other trio held position, their own cursed energy coiled like snakes. "I came the moment your message reached me," said casually. "I was about to enter the dream realm when Sensei passed along some news, then I saw your call." His eyes drifted to the strangers. "These the ones, not with the ancient sorcerers." Shook her head. "No, according to them, they're not reincarnated. They call themselves awakened ones, the survivors of the dream realm's game." The grinning man stood and gave an exaggerated bow. "That's right, these 2 are in Rinka. We survived what no one else could, we won." He placed a hand over his heart. "Everyone knows your name, we've been waiting to meet you." His tone was playful but edged with respect. "You're younger, sure, but in our world, strength outranks age, doesn't it?" Didn't return the smile. "If you've got something to say, skip the flattery." Chuckled uneasily. "Fair enough, we want to join you. In the dream realm, we didn't have a choice, but now we can help." "How many people did you kill?" asked. His voice was quiet, but the question carried weight. The grin faltered, let out a scoff. "Told you this was pointless, they act like saints. We fought for survival. That world was a slaughterhouse. You kill, they respawn. Why keep count?" His grin turned twisted. "But sure, if you want a number, a lot." "Bastard," shouted, stepping forward beside her. Didn't raise his voice. "You want respect, but you treated human life like a number. Power without restraint is corruption. You're not looking for redemption, you're just afraid to die." "Wait," began, panic flickering across his face. "You don't understand, we were forced." Rinka cut him off coldly. "Stop begging, no one cares about what we went through, not them's, not anyone's." His eyes sharpened. "You could have left, you stayed because you liked the power, that's all this is." Their silence told him everything. These weren't victims, they were opportunists who'd found comfort in bloodshed. He glanced toward the bun-haired man. The man's eyes were calm, detached, like a witness observing a story he'd already read to the end. "Your executioner's begging to be pardoned," said evenly. "You're not special, you're just next." The air thickened, cursed energy rippled like heat waves. Grinned, cracking his neck. "Told you, time to prove ourselves." "I don't," hissed. But before any of them could move, another voice spoke up, calm but commanding. "If you kill them now, you'll only be doing what wants." The bun-haired man finally stepped forward, his tone quiet but electric. Sparks flickered across his skin. He said, "I lived 400 years ago, died without ever facing. When I woke up here, I realized this was my second chance." He met's gaze, lightning humming through the air. You're strong, strong enough to make me forget for a moment anyway. Tilted his head slightly. You're not wrong, but those 3 die here, I won't let them walk out. I took one step back, instinct screaming too late. Vanished. A flash of silver. Blood hit the floor before the sound did. His body split neatly in two, no warning, no build-up. Stood exactly where he had been a heartbeat earlier, no gleaming clean. And Rinka froze, even looked mildly impressed. Smiled faintly, lightning crackling louder now. Let's make it interesting, a wager. Said nothing. If you win, I'll fight for your side. If I win, you'll help me reach. His grin widened. Of course, you can kill me too. I don't mind. I just want to see what lies beyond me. Raised his blade slightly. You're strong. Let's see if the legend holds up. Lightning erupted like thunder splitting the heavens. His form blurred, every strike crackling with divine charge. A technique release, he intoned, eyes glowing white. Lightning god Amber was enveloped in lightning, his form distorting into something monstrous. Bolts of raw thunder coiled around him, forming an armor of primal energy with beast-like features. Now visibly larger, gripped his iron rod tightly. The earth beneath him cracked violently, spiderweb fractures spreading across the stadium floor. In an instant, his figure vanished from view. A piercing bolt of lightning sliced through the air, striking straight toward. The stadium trembled from the shockwave, the thunder roaring behind the strike. His hair whipped around his face, a tingling sensation crawling across his skin. The speed shocked him. This wasn't ordinary agility, it surpassed even the N-clan's projection sorcery. The strike was ferocious, but it's still not enough, muttered calmly. With a blur, he met the lightning head-on, fist drawn back. As his punch shot forward, it collided with the iron rod, barely shifted into position by, whose reaction couldn't keep pace yet somehow always aligned. The resulting explosion of energy blasted outward. Fierce winds tore through the stadium, and the pristine green turf was reduced to dirt and rubble in seconds. Evacuate, ordered sharply, pulling in toward the exit. Even near the stadium's edge, it wasn't safe. Once outside, adjusted his knit cap and peered back toward the raging thunder within the arena. His voice carried disbelief. Incredible. I'd heard rumors of his strength, but this is the first time I've seen it myself. Standing beside him was awestruck. Unlike, wasn't as publicly known, but what unfolded before her was clear. This was a true special grade sorcerer. The lightning alone radiated enough cursed energy to threaten anyone watching. The stadium shook violently. She didn't doubt that it would be reduced to rubble before long. So this is what it means to be a special grade, she whispered. Back in the stadium, was beginning to understand what the strongest 400 years ago really meant. His cursed energy had fully materialized as lightning, forming an offensive and defensive force that enveloped his entire body. Each strike delivered both explosive impact and surging electricity, capable of paralyzing or penetrating even the most formidable defense. Even with his advanced cursed energy control, bolstered by his time-based technique, he felt the sting of every blow. But that wasn't what intrigued him the most. It was reaction time. He wasn't reacting logically or consciously. His body moved almost instinctively, like it had memorized movements before they happened. It was an eerie, unnatural precision. Suddenly paused mid-motion, he focused his senses, eyes narrowing as he scanned the air. Those faint electrical currents floating around me, is that your trick? From the veil of lightning, smirk flickered. Correct, their currents extended from my body. Whenever you move within them, I feel the disturbance. It's like sonar. My body reacts through them, even if I can't match your speed consciously. He continued, voice laced with honest admiration. Still, even that isn't enough. I know you haven't used your full power yet. I can feel it, and this form, I can't maintain it forever. So now, I'm going all in. Gripped his iron rod, muscles bulged, and with one flex, the crude weapon shattered in his hands. A surge of purple lightning erupted from the core. Crackling arcs shot outward. Within seconds, the steel dripping to the ground in molten streaks. From the storm emerged a single-edged blade glowing with purple light. It held it aloft. "This is," he said reverently, "a legendary spiritual blade gave it to me." He raised it, letting the lightning dance across its surface. His exact words, "This sword's compatibility with you is perfect. Use it to kill. I hope you're ready." Without hesitation, drove the sword into his own chest. It exploded into lightning, surging across his form like divine wrath. The torrent grew denser, spiraling around him like a typhoon. "Take Calamity God." Thunder roared as the energy spiraled upward, shattering the stadium roof. The sky split apart, a column of lightning punching into the heavens and tearing a hole in the clouds. The lightning began to recoil, swirling inward toward a singularity at the stadium's center. Then came the change. From the eye of the storm, two colossal hands burst through the lightning, tearing it open. First came armored forearms, then a full body. A towering humanoid figure emerged, clad in ancient, ornate armor forged from lightning itself. A horned-like mask concealed his face, regal and terrifying. Purple bolts pulsed along every inch of his form. But wasn't watching the armor, his eyes were locked on something else. Behind floated a faintly glowing ring, a perfect circle of purple light. It radiated with quiet divinity, his breath caught. Oh, that light. It mirrored the aura he had once seen behind that demonic, godlike figure. Different in detail, but unmistakably the same in essence. Is this connected to the spiritual swords, or are they evolving the same way? As the lightning retracted into the light ring, it grew deeper in color and intensity, confirming suspicion. But this wasn't the time for research. A deep, distorted voice echoed through the thunder. "I'm coming." This new form stepped forward. Every footfall sent tremors through the ground. Lightning danced along his palm as he gripped the air, forming a blade of pure devastation. Reformed in his hand, sharper than ever. With a swing, he unleashed a blade of near-black lightning, an arc of death tearing toward. I didn't flinch. His cursed energy wrapped around No. With his technique, even a broken blade could be reversed to its original form, so long as it didn't suffer domain-level damage. This meant could push his weapon to its limit, enhancing it with nearly indestructible cursed energy. A time wheel spin. A one-sword lightning cut. A crouch slightly, sword sheathed, then vanished. The sky-shattering bolt from fractured midair, disintegrating as blades sliced through it. The air screamed from the pressure, the stadium shrieking in protest. He glanced down. No trembled in his grip, on the brink of collapse. With a breath, reversed it back to normal using his technique. Looking up, he locked eyes with. The remnants of their clash, the broken lightning, the scattered debris, froze behind him, suspended in time. None could reach him. But was already moving again. This time his speed was real. He had caught up. A grin spread across his face. That's more like it. Stadium could no longer withstand the onslaught. After being pierced by bolts of scattered lightning, the once modern structure collapsed with a thunderous roar. From the swirling dust and smoke, two figures shot into the air. In a flash, the first of them vanished. Standing far from the waves of dust created by the destruction, gazed into the smoke. The crackling lightning within still gleamed, fierce and brilliant. Around him, the rain began to fall once more, only to freeze midair, suspended like glass beads. Raised his blade, the airborne raindrops distorted, stretched, and twisted, transforming into countless thorn-like arrows in an instant. As his blade descended, the arrows disappeared, leaving behind only a chaotic blur in the air. A sudden gust tore through the smoke. The invisible arrows tore it to shreds before striking a radiant figure hidden within. The lightning faltered for a moment but surged again. The figure shattered the smoke and reappeared. Now on the open street, under streaks of sunlight, the godlike form of hovered. Lightning-forged armor clung to him, and the radiant halo behind him pulsed with divine brilliance. He had not lied, he was reaching an unprecedented peak. Yet at the same time, he teetered on the brink of collapse. This was not his power. When handed him his intentions were never hidden. He wanted to use this power to face the strongest modern sorcerers. In's plan was a blade, nothing more. But had accepted that, as long as he could fight monsters that transcended time, even being a tool was enough. Only someone like could fuse cursed objects with people without the path of incarnation. But because of that, I've seen a glimpse of power beyond. He stretched his arms wide as if to embrace the lightning. The wheel of light behind him darkened to a deep purple. Lightning patterns danced across it, majestic, divine, and the surrounding energy bowed in reverence. This cursed technique was unique. It held overwhelming power but also inflicted destruction upon himself. At the peak, it could obliterate both him and his enemy. So he adapted. He used his cursed technique to analyze energy, allowing his body to carry lightning's destructive force without directly invoking his ability. In doing so, he reached the height of his era without ever activating his technique. But the golden age had passed. There was no longer a peak to climb. He was not who could live through generations. He was a man, a mortal, praised as the strongest of his time. Death waited for him. No matter how far he reached, it would always be there. And then came, offering him a deal he couldn't refuse. A chance to fight the demon god of the era. How could he say no? Let me feel alive again, he had thought. Let me not be alone. The pulsed with power, lightning gathered around it, drawn toward the blade in his hand. Then he swung. The lightning fused with the slash. Though there was still distance between them, the arc of destruction crossed it in an instant. Had already inverted No at his waist, as if sheathing it. As the apocalyptic purple light filled the sky, time itself seemed to halt. What did lightning look like when frozen? It was a painting. A three-dimensional masterpiece, and within his domain he held the brush. The slashes cut through the lightning. Cursed energy forged into blades tore the sky open. One massive strike stopped midair, frozen like a rift through reality. If only I could cut space, mused, I'd make a decent overpowered protagonist. The severed arcs of lightning remained motionless outside his domain's influence, forming a network of lines that fragmented the incoming storm. The time resumed. The sword light exploded in all directions, thunder scattered into light. As body shattered, his armor lost all defensive strength, sliced cleanly into pieces. Relaxed, thinking the battle had ended. But something was wrong. There was no blood, no flesh, only remnants glowing purple, crackling with faint electricity. Those fragments lifted into the air, converging once more beneath the purple halo above. Watched in disbelief as body reassembled. Before the lightning obscured his face, smiled. Thank you. The light engulfed him, thunder surged. The god of lightning rose again, divine sword raised high. A radiant burst exploded behind him. From his view, it looked like a massive purple eye opening in the sky. An oppressive aura swept over everything. Slash. His voice echoed, not his own, but something ancient and divine. The sky dimmed, clouds gathered in silence, then erupted with lightning. Thousands of bolts converged in the air, twisting together. A massive figure, identical to in his divine form, took shape in the sky. It held lightning as a sword. And with it, it brought the end of the world. At this point, no longer faced a man. He faced a god. All sorcerers within the barrier could see it. From the edges of the domain's eyes widened. Are they even human anymore? Why are they world-ending disasters while we're still throwing punches and using cursed tools? Shielded his eyes, are we really just going to wait here? Stood still, her crow perched on her arm. Yes, this is the closest barrier. We just wait until San finishes up. Oh, you think he can? Believe in him, she said. This is the new generation's time. All I need is a pension and a sunny beach. As the storm swelled, the sky lit with divine judgment. Then a figure rose into the air. Oh, he had left behind a cratered street. Now he soared upward, facing the towering god of thunder. As they collided, No vanished. He brought his hands together. A domain expansion, returning to nothingness. A black barrier spread outward, swallowing most of the thunder god's shadow. All the power that had built to a climax vanished. From his perspective, it happened in a blink. The black barrier absorbed everything, lightning, fury, divine form. And then there was nothing. Not even air, not even lights. Just absence. A bang. Fell from the sky, landing nearby, squatted on the ground, holding in his hand. He inspected the spiritual sword thoughtfully as he responded to. Oh, this thing, he began. He trailed off, unable to explain that he couldn't truly speak to a barrier he couldn't breach. It was the deepest kind of isolation. I used to feel like this world was a game, continued, with everyone as NPCs and only me as the player. If it were just a game, that would be fun, but reality suffocates. Seeing empathy in his expression cleared his throat. That's not the case anymore. I've met people worth caring about, and I've found philosophical meaning in them. Plunge the unremarkable into the ground before. Once radiant, the artifact now appeared as nothing more than an ancient relic. Our connection to this world comes through others, whether good or bad. You feel lonely because no one truly understands you, right? I accepted the blade and stood. He had unleashed an explosive surge of power using it and seemed destined to fall, but its interruption saved him. Silently recalled distant faces blurred, even their names were gone. Waited beneath the surface he wanted information on. He felt moved by his past, but his mission came first. To gain something, you must give something. Start by trying to understand others, but that can wait. Tell me about. Nodded, then shared what he knew. Dates back to the era, the golden age of, I think he has a method of extending his life, similar to his immortality reset, maybe through his cursed technique or another means. One thing's clear, it involves his body. I've seen him 3 times. In each, he used a different body and appearance. The only constant was the forehead mark. I don't know everything, but I can guess. Holding the ancient sword, continued. This barrier exists to force us to fight within it. When I killed some others, I felt them merge with it after death. And when he gave me this cursed object, he mentioned your name from the start. He never thought I could beat you. He must know you deeply. You should ask about, suggested. He's been alive through eras too. His eyes flickered, then he remained silent. He wouldn't say that had disappeared. Was a mystery, a era figure who still acted today, able to change bodies over centuries and retain abilities and memories. Considered whether might have knowledge about, but realized that even had remained dormant for months, unusual too. Sorcerers remained wary, especially after the loss of fingers stored at high. There had even been proposals to supervise directly, but it was rejected. He was always under the watch of Or. I need to deal with these barriers, said. Do you plan to stay or leave? If you want to escape, we can make a pact. Saw strength firsthand. If he couldn't kill him, perhaps he could make him an ally. The world desperately needed powerful sorcerers. After some thought, agreed. Bound by the contract, he could not leave the barrier unless he killed other, but now had a way to help him exit. The agreement was simple: would aid side until was dead or 3 months passed. In exchange, he got his freedom. Neither party was surprised. Had created dozens of barriers and reincarnated many sorcerers to fight in them. He was no savior, had fought but never sought to torture or kill recklessly. It was too dull compared to battles like the one just fought. They spoke briefly. If you were from that era, you'd be legendary. Perhaps I've witnessed history firsthand. Smiled and led back to and the others. They watched warily but relaxed when introduced him. You wouldn't be. Guessed immediately. Despite's threat earlier, he hadn't tried to kill them. It made sense that would strike a deal. She greeted warmly and observed silently, trusting completely. After using Time Stop to escape the barrier, received updates, and had helped resolve 6 barriers, only 2 remained. One was manageable, but the last was the most dangerous, with at least 4 special-grade cursed spirits and massive cursed energy reactions. The plan split into 2 teams, agreed, but volunteered to join on the final barrier and accepted. Shortly after, received a message from himself. A good news and bad news. Good is has been rescued. This round is over. Stopped's voice continued. I'm fine now, don't worry. You handle things over there. Relief washed over, thousands of words stuck in his throat, but he managed only, okay, I'll be back. Then delivered the bad news. The Dream Realm has completed 1 round. It shows no sign of dissolving and may enter a second very soon, but don't worry, we've got this side, you just focus. Understood, said. At 3:46 p.m., a magnitude 4.2 earthquake rippled outward from the central region, affecting 4 cities before the seismic energy gradually subsided. Initially, most assumed it was just another minor tremor common to this land. But soon after, another quake followed, stronger than the last. Then another. And another. These repeated tremors were abnormal, enough to draw serious attention. Due to its geographical location, small earthquakes weren't uncommon in Japan, but this level of persistent seismic activity was anything but normal. Soon, the seismic analysis results came in, confirming the epicenter to be within a known barrier zone. The only plausible explanation, a terrifying cursed spirit, was behind the chaos. By the 4th quake, the tremors had grown significant and wasted no time, arriving at the outer perimeter of the barrier. If this frequency continued, the consequences could be devastating. While a curse's power had limits, no one was willing to gamble on what they were. Thankfully, the surrounding population had already been evacuated. If not, the death toll would have been catastrophic. Inside the barrier, what greeted eyes was a towering, grotesque cursed spirit, spider-shaped, with an obese black and yellow body. Its bloated form was riddled with bulging, pustule-like sacs. The ground still trembled under its weight, but those vibrations only seemed to excite the creature. The true source of the quake is still ahead. This one began, readying his staff. I'll handle it, interrupted, stepping forward. It'll be faster that way. In the next instant, vanished. The spider curse barely had time to react. Its body twitched as a wet, tearing sound echoed through the air. Without warning, its limbs began to tear off one by one, fluid spewing from ruptured sacs. With a screeching hiss, the cursed spirit grotesquely dismembered itself before it ever glimpsed its attacker. Its final moments were filled with confusion. From within its fractured body, its compound eyes caught a descending figure cloaked in cursed energy, but it was already too late. Its head hung below its abdomen, and the blade-like legs lay shattered, slick fluids flooding the ruined street beneath it. It never understood how the attack slipped through its defenses. It simply died, dissolving into residue. Let's move, said, sheathing his cursed tool as he pressed onward. This barrier truly lived up to its title as one of the most dangerous zones. Before long, they encountered another formidable cursed spirit. The weaker ones didn't even warrant mention. They were everywhere, mindless pests that it eliminated with ease, however, were noticeably absent. The barrier had become a cursed playground. Another special grade, muttered after dispatching a phantom-like curse. It was the fourth such spirit, each one strong enough to be classified as special grade, yet none had survived long enough to even activate their techniques before falling to. Still, this was concerning. The longer they remained here, the more likely they'd be pulled into this trap. Killing these curses meant they could be absorbed into the barrier's network. But curses were unlike sorcerers. They didn't submit, didn't hesitate, they fought to the end. If held back against every threat, how long could he keep that up? He had to eliminate those that posed danger. The main target remained the cursed spirit triggering the earthquakes. It wasn't just a threat within the barrier, it was affecting the outside world. Left unchecked, the damage could spread across the entire country. They didn't need to search long. A new anomaly appeared, drawing their eyes and anyone else still alive inside. A massive section of land began to rise into the air. The ground itself twisted upward, lifting soil, buildings, and debris into the sky as if gravity had reversed. Earth and stone floated above like some inverted mirage. "Is this a technique?" asked stunned. Even from a distance, the scale of destruction rivaled what he had unleashed at full power, maybe more. This wasn't an illusion. Real Earth, real buildings had broken off and now hovered midair. If they fell, the damage would be catastrophic. And the force suspending them, that had to be the work of a powerful special-grade cursed spirit. As they approached, the source revealed itself. Amid the floating land, a massive figure sat cross-legged in midair, 4 arms, an elephant's head, a humanoid body. Its hands clutched giant prayer beads, and under its maintained hand seal, cursed energy rippled outward in waves. "A deity, looks like a figure from some obscure Asian mythology, rare to see," remarked. Before they could analyze further, the ground below them heaved. From the cracked earth came another monster, this one shaped like an enormous fish. It burst into the air, silent and smooth like a skyscraper thrown skyward. Its sheer size was staggering, yet its ascent made barely a sound. And with that, the tremors returned. The central ground shattered violently, tilting in all directions. Concrete slabs rose like tombstones, buildings toppled like toy blocks. The earthquake-resistant architecture stood no chance. Dashed to the top of a fractured landmass, curse sword already drawn. 2 curses, one clearly the source of the earthquake, the fish-like one. It could only mean one thing. This had to be cursed spirit manipulation. The technique he inherited from his body was here in person. No time to dwell, launched himself into the air. Above him, the elephant-headed curse continued its hand seals, while the fish-cursed spirit plummeted like a meteor. Fish-like earthquake-linked, there was only one myth that came to mind: the earthquake catfish, a legendary creature said to predict quakes. But this was no omen, it was a natural disaster incarnate. Still, logic didn't apply to curses. If it could be killed, that was enough. To expand his domain, but paused. The elephant-headed curse was changing its hand seal. His instincts screamed at him. Time wheels spin. Entering time null state, landed atop the earthquake catfish's body. He executed a precision operation, ripping through flesh, bone, and cursed defenses using only his fists and cursed energy. The earthquake catfish spiraled downward, body ruptured and mangled. Followed it, locking eyes on the entity still floating in the sky. Then it moved. With a strange, deep chant, the elephant-headed curse triggered a new technique. The floating earth above began to collapse. "I'll back you up." A flash of lightning surged across the battlefield, materialized a spear of lightning, then hurled it into the sky. It morphed into a colossal lightning dragon, roaring toward the godlike curse. But just before it could hit, it vanished. The lightning disappeared entirely, like it had been erased from existence. Only the falling debris remained, and worse still, the earthquake catfish had just dismantled, leapt into the air again, seemingly unharmed. His eyes narrowed. That wasn't technique reversal, but the result was the same. That elephant-headed curse, it's technique. It's not a reversal, but the effect is similar. What kind of ability is this? I fused the powers of the No and the mirror with the Dream Eater to create this dream realm. It has the power to turn illusions into reality. The technique awakened within it is real and true, existing independently from reality. This will be a critical step in releasing. Listened thoughtfully, then pressed. But didn't you indirectly help humanity by creating those sorcerers? Gestured dismissively, humans are complex. Their conflicts among themselves are often more savage than those against curses. You've seen how those yearning for power behaved in the dream realm. For power, they slaughtered comrades without hesitation. That is something sorcerers refuse to tolerate. They will become enemies. Grinned cruelly, once is sent into this dream realm, I will deal with him. Before that, I'll deliver a profound gift. Turned his head to and paused, but what if they decide to kill? His expression flickered. Human nature is complicated. They may commit ugly deeds for certain motivations, yet they also compromise for family, companions, and such. You need not worry. I hope these little trinkets hold him back for a while longer. On the screen, the barrier's interior played out. From a distance, the collapsing earth looked like torrents falling from heaven, dwarfed figures scattered below. Oh, a barrier interior. As the mountain-sized plunge of earth threatened to crush the ground, stepped onto the mud mass before him, using it like a ladder toward the sky. Each step punched craters beneath him, but he climbed swiftly and reached mid-air. A domain expansion. Positioned between the two massive cursed spirits, attempted domain expansion. At the very moment he formed he sensed something else, an invisible force suppressing cursed energy. The suppression was so intense that his domain failed at the first attempt. Still in time null state, he instead unleashed a concentrated cursed energy arrow. Under his technique's enhancement, the arrow seemed to vanish from existence as it flew, an illusion of transitioning from existence to existence. Watch the arrow fade inch by inch. He recalled how earthquake catfish recovered despite gravely injured. The anomaly intrigued him. Thankfully, this isn't a technique that copies others. It seems to negate damage rather than reverse it, yet it still manipulates earth and structures. It's more complex. He paused, then leapt using the remaining floating earth and debris toward the elephant-headed curse. He landed on the earthquake catfish's head. Only a few hundred meters remained to the elephant-headed curse, a short distance in their scale. He dispelled time null. Instantly, both cursed spirits noticed his presence. The elephant-headed curse shifted hand seals. The earthquake catfish writhed beneath him, attempting to dislodge him, but its enormous body became a liability. Unable to reach effectively, it dove toward the ground. Based on its earlier emergence from the earth, it likely moves through subterranean terrain at will. Pushed off, as the fish dove, it accelerated rapidly, launched upward in the opposite direction, closing in on the deity figure. The curse shifted seals again, mid-air froze, flames erupted around him, coiling into a fiery sea. At the same time, water materialized beneath his feet, instantly freezing into ice shards that shot toward him. Materialization from nothing, a construction technique, but defensive, not neutralizing my attack, and fire and ice appear simultaneously. He held his stance, then activated his technique again. Time wheel reverse. Resisting the magical suppression, forced out a dense mass of cursed energy. He threw it. A visible streak formed, and for an instant it struck the elephant-headed curse. The impact shrank visibly, but it didn't vanish. It struck the body, prompting a powerful roar. Smoke of clashing fire and ice billowed behind him. He grasped the curse's technique a little clearer. But then the ground shifted again. The earthquake catfish, resurfacing beneath him unexpectedly, launched another attack. A massive earth pillar shot skyward at great velocity, shaking the ground. "I'll handle you first." Entering time null state, Drew Noand plunged it into the incoming stone pillar to slow his descent. He jumped several times and reached the ground quickly. Now only a bit of the fish's body peeked above the surface. A domain expansion. He released and formed the black barrier. Moving away from the elephant-headed curse weakened the energy suppression, adapted quickly and succeeded on his second attempt. Returning to nothingness. The barrier dissolved everything inside. Aside from himself, all matter vanished, including the earthquake catfish embedded in the earth. He stood in a deep crater, gazing upward at the elephant-headed curse, miraculously intact. The ground trembled as muddy earth surged again, attempting to bury him. Nearby was forced to retreat until aftershocks passed, then returned. Reversed the blade of No in his hand, now pointing upward at the curse. He poured all his energy into reinforcing his body. The ground beneath collapsed, his arms tensed like steel. In one explosive motion, he hurled the blade upward. A sonic boom rattled the sky. Though invisible, the thrown blade cut through the air toward the elephant-headed curse. Blood sprayed as it fell from the sky, and the blade reappeared in his hand. Physical attacks are effective, its technique suppresses but not brute force. He recalled the mythological template, Ganesha, elephant-headed deity known for removing obstacles. If this curse was its manifestation, the technique fits. Erasing obstacles equals negating attacks. But more than elimination, the curse materialized illusions into reality, levitation, fire, ice, earth manipulation. It resembled a construction-style ability derived from imagination but limited in its scope. A powerful strike could still outrank it. He positioned under the falling deity, everything in the sky froze. Without needing his domain, he activated Time Stop, arresting the curse's cursed energy. Then he erased its body. With both cursed spirits exorcised, the earthquake's cause ended, stood on broken soil and reunited with after the aftershocks. He was preparing to exorcise remaining powerful curses when urgent information appeared. "Emergency, stabbed reappears, contact immediately, sensei, is that settled?" asked, his expression calm yet firm. He found proposal logical, he was merely confirming. Inclined his head. The requirement to kill 100 people refers not to the number of bodies, but the equivalent amount of cursed energy you absorb. That equals the energy from 100 lives. Rescuing is straightforward, but saving most individuals in the dream realm means sacrificing some. Fortunately, many don't deserve to be saved, so the moral dilemma becomes easier. Despite its casual tone, recognize the weight of the choice. It wasn't about guilt, but how decisions like this chip away at one's moral core. By accepting this plan, execution became clearer. The dream realm logic, for example, could replicate his 6 eyes there even though he shouldn't theoretically. Yet that illogical edge is what made the dream realm unpredictable and useful. Wondered what would happen if he summoned the final of his 10 shadows technique, especially that enemy he hadn't yet conquered. Unfortunately, there was no time, and his sister's rescue took priority. With several strong hunters subdued, could use technique amplification to fuse his divine dog and evil prison dog into hybrid forms. No domain, no fatigue needed thanks to the dream realm's rules. Paired with a nearly whole, their positions reversed. They hunted the hunters. Capturing or defeating them wasn't difficult. The real hurdle was convincing the survivors, those who had refused to kill, to finally act, but only one act was needed. These hunters had amassed enough kills to escape, they had the cursed energy needed, and devised a rule. If someone killed a hunter using the weapon held by a survivor, the energy transferred to that survivor. This rule allowed the survivors to perform the executions themselves, meeting escape conditions, while and orchestrated everything behind the scenes. One by one, the hunters were dispatched by reluctant hands, their cursed energy fueling others' escape. Those who left gained no power, only the memory of the dream remained. Only 3 remained and had fulfilled the conditions with help. Though she initially resisted, she eventually. A let's go is waiting outside. They awakened in a cleared room in reality. Present were, and others were absent or handling field issues. They sighed with relief upon seeing and awake. The dream realm may have been illusory, but the experience and the effort were real. Reports arrived of other victims awakening from comas. When and the others regained consciousness, it marked the final step. Addressed the group, the threat isn't over. We don't know how many times the dream realm will recur. The enemy may lure more people into it. Stay vigilant. A worried about summoned, after examination, reported her recovery. Maybe she's been asleep too long to wake immediately. Didn't have to wait, opened her eyes. She looked at the ceiling, then fixed her gaze on him. Tears welled in his eyes, managed a gentle smile, and awkwardly stroked his head. Don't cry, I'm back. She gestured toward someone nearby, stepped forward, awkwardly humbled. Hello, son, I'm from Sendai, I'm classmate. Tried to stand, supported her, and she asked about. Has he returned? It's been so long, I wonder what he's like now. Explained was on another mission. Chuckled. San is a special grade sorcerer like sensei. I wanted to join him on the mission, but principal wouldn't allow it. Beckoned closer, let me see the friend finally made. Walked over and began to speak, but froze. Looked down to find a short black-bladed knife plunged into his chest. Pain surged even without blood. A pale hand gripped the hilt. Oh, sister. Gasped, smiled brighter, pressed the blade into his throat and moved behind. His consciousness fragmented. A mocking laugh echoed like he never understood why betrayed him or what conspiracy this was. His mind broke. He fell backward, hanging midair in unnatural contortion. Slowly, his body drifted upward and downward. Then and others noticed. In this confined space, suppressed his cursed energy, attacking risked collateral damage. The hostage situation was complete and all controlled by the enemy. Oh, sister breathed. Whispered in his ear, you knew, wouldn't you, that I'm not who you think. As despair deepened, he realized the truth, this was an ancient reincarnated. Spoke from the edge. An ancient technique, so you orchestrated all this to awaken. I assumes consciousness was sealed and sent into the dream realm. Now confused as smiled. Correct, Imes, that body was sent into the dream realm, only then could awaken. She glanced at with fervor, he ignored her, facing directly. He wasn't fully recovered, but understood modern sorcerers clearly. Motioned for him to step back, then addressed and, you expect me to wait until returns to suppress you again? Do you intend to threaten me with, or do you plan to escape now? Stroked his chin. Let's make a deal, time given until returns. I will regain full strength, then we fight. If I lose, I leave's body and hers. You can refuse, but only if you abandon your student and your relative. Felt rage as grip tightened. Black tendrils now wrapped him, immobilizing vital points. Studied them silently, then his 6 eyes, as explained by reliable sources, focused. The binding vow had been set. Released, and the terms agreed upon were simple. The next day, within the cleared Tokyo barrier, there would be a one-on-one duel. Hadn't stated his victory conditions outright, it felt unnecessary. Everyone understood the unspoken threat. If he lost, would abide by the vow and expel himself from his body. The same went for currently possessed by. While the agreement had appeared straightforward, both sides were clearly hiding their true intentions. Sensei, my sister in the dream realm, she's real, I can feel it. Clenched his fists, head lowered, voice tight, didn't argue. In truth, he agreed. His presence in the dream realm had never once felt artificial or manipulated. Nothing about her demeanor matched the traits of someone possessed by an ancient sorcerer. And in that realm, what existed wasn't physical form but consciousness, soul. So perhaps was in a situation much like a shared vessel. The sorcerer who called herself coexisted within her. That meant they had spoken with, laughed with, protected in the dream realm was truly her. That was why neither nor noticed anything wrong while inside. Only after leaving did seize full control. From then on, Swell had likely been pushed to the background, submerged, unnoticed. After all, when ancient sorcerers reincarnated, they could retain their host's memories, allowing them to mask their presence until the time was right. Go inform, the dream realm situation isn't over, I have a bad feeling. This is where the enemy's real move begins. If we must, we'll forcibly shut down public access to the dream realm, even if it means revealing everything. The enemy won't let this chance slip by. His voice was sharp as he gave instructions. We also need to decide who enters the dream realm next. The binding vow with isn't what matters, don't trust the enemy. Once is freed, will naturally be suppressed again. And he glanced at, once returns, if he can take control, even if that ancient sorcerer tries to self-destruct, she won't succeed. As long as consciousness survives, we will find a way to save her. The second half was for, his student wasn't the type to easily express emotion, but knew what truly mattered to him. His comrades at high, his teachers, and most of all, his sister. If were hurt, had no doubt would never forgive himself. If had entered the dream realms, maybe none of this would happened. His voice was a low murmur, and had already stepped away under the pretext of making arrangements, laid a hand on shoulder. The boy looked composed but could feel it. He was like a dormant volcano on the verge of eruption. Lost in regret, caught in what-ifs, tormenting himself with alternate outcomes. If had entered the dream realm, schemed to sense consciousness into it and awaken from the outside might have failed, but didn't realize he was spiraling. From where he stood, saw it clearly. Had intervened then, would simply found a new opportunity to accomplish the same goal. Though hadn't been able to act immediately, his 6 eyes caught the clues. The black, short blade that had fused into his body, the one that hadn't physically harmed him, stood out sharply in his vision. That blade had acted as a medium. It sensed consciousness into the dream realm. And to pull off such a feat, only one name came to mind. Likely knew more about than what had been exposed during the live broadcast. The plan was always fluid, ready to pivot depending on movements. What mattered now was pulling back from self-destruction, but before could speak. Sensei, I want to go back into the dream realm, needs to be rescued. As for my sister, I'll leave that too. Didn't need to hear more to understand. Objectively, wasn't wrong, but there was something else in his words. He wanted to confront the final, the ultimate weapon of the 10 Shadows technique, the one said to have once clashed with the head of the clan in a duel to the deaths. Had considered summoning back in the dream realm, but the situation hadn't allowed it. Now, with renewed guilt and shame over his weakness, he was clearly ready to push himself to the edge. Before, he might have summoned recklessly. Now, with and present, he had changed. He wasn't just chasing power, he wanted control over it. And to that, what could say? He saw it, the boy was transforming. Not because he'd mastered domain expansion or evolved his technique, but because he'd gained resolve. Then Go said, we'll take care of things on this end if... He left the sentence unfinished. It represented the worst-case outcome if and broke the vow, if they failed to save both and peacefully. That was when the binding vow would serve its true purpose. Because the cursed energy and blood involved in sealing the pact would reveal its exact locations if they breached it, would know where they were every moment. This was why he had agreed to terms in the first place. If things collapsed, they would still have a lead and opportunity to retaliate. Besides, had a strange hunch. wouldn't break the vow, not because he cared about the hostages. No, it felt like he was planning something else entirely. This feeling again, us exposed, the enemy hiding in the shadows, just like back then. Clenched his fists, a cold memory flashing through him. The enemy waited unseen, scheming before delivering a fatal blow, a game of shadows, and often tilted the board in their favor. This exact location remained unknown. Even for someone like who was among the most sensitive, concealment techniques made it nearly impossible to pinpoint him. That was the price of standing in the light. Open threats could be dodged, but hidden ones, those were far deadlier. The tension that had briefly eased spiked again. The authorities issued an urgent nationwide warning. It concerned the dream realm, but the details were vague, emphasizing only its extreme danger. There was no need to exaggerate. Many participants from the first event had failed and remained trapped in a coma-like state, bodies alive, minds asleep. Publicly, they were perceived as vegetables. Such real and visible consequences were enough. It was obvious would expand the dream realm's reach. That was the simplest way to delay rescue and create chaos. The government's warning aimed to dissuade impulsive individuals. Yet they couldn't expose the full truth either. There would always be reckless people who underestimated the risk. And he wouldn't make the dream realm public, not because he couldn't, but because of the cost. The dream realm wasn't infinite, it had limits. It couldn't support a vast population. So society's goal became twofold: limit public access and dispatch elite sorcerers to contain it from within. Meanwhile, the external strategy was clear: neutralize and hunt down. And compared to him, curses were mere distractions. Scheming had always been at the heart of every crisis. "Oh Lord." The voice came from a white-haired figure kneeling on the ground. Their features were sharp, almost androgynous, but elegant. Their expression gleamed with reverence and excitement. He gazed down at them, then smiled faintly. "And it's been a while, so found you too." "Yes, Lord, he's the one who ensured your return to the human world," replied, holding out a small box. "He gave me these as well." Inside were several withered fingers, his expression darkened, unreadable. That man really thinks of everything. Fine, I'll go see him." What about me?" His voice was laced with both sweetness and madness. Her eyes shone with twisted affection and obsession, didn't even glance at her. "This body is important. She's a key piece of the plan. You're coming too." Beamed at his response, the smile on her face unhinged and brilliant. Before she could speak again, turned sharply toward her. You dare speak to Lord like that?" Arched a brow, then sneered mockingly. The little errand boy, still alive, how unfortunate." A stiffened recognition flashed in his eyes. "You." But before the confrontation escalated, having already absorbed several fingers, cut in. "Enough, let's go. It's time to meet an old friend. Long time no see," and acknowledged each other, though what existed inside them now were different souls entirely. Observed with satisfaction. "It seems my plan succeeded exactly as intended." Everything pointed back to, he orchestrated its actions, provided the Black Blade harnessing Dream Eater power, and ensured remained herself in the dream realm. By preserving her consciousness, he enabled a seamless betrayal upon her return to reality. Without who controls time technique in the dream realm at the critical moment, blade strike on unfolded precisely as planned. Smiled coldly, settling herself on the sofa. Her face radiated arrogance and triumph. Was all of this really necessary? Are today's sorcerers worthy of such extreme caution? Laughed softly. He knew only had fragmented information. Her actions were guided mostly by what he'd told her, not first-hand experience. Never underestimate modern sorcerers. In combat power, some have reached or even surpassed era level, especially one sorcerer. You remember him, yes. Nodded. He's not blood related to the girl, but I recall the black-haired young man, although I saw no in his actions. Retrieved a videotape from his sleeve. With a gesture, a nearby monitor booted up. This is recorded from a relative's vantage point. Watch carefully. The video displayed candid, covert footage, moved about without noticing any surveillance. As watched, her expression darkened. Turned to seated nearby. Is this plan truly viable? His voice was calm. This path differs from my previous one, but yes, I will succeed. Smiled. It's risky, first of its kind, but since it's you, I'm confident. You've already failed once before, said, but now there's another chance. As the Curse King, it should be effortless. The conversation shifted to, I heard she's aiding you, added. Nodded. Without her, mastering those barriers so swiftly would been impossible. But her technique binds her, temporary confinement by human thoughts. She imprisons herself. Interrupted. When are we getting married? Neither nor responded. The air chilled, veins bulged its temples. You saved, Lord, she said contemptuously. A loyal servant kneels in gratitude, yes. His words hung in the air like poison. Without hers, return would have been far more difficult. Still remained silent. Finally spoke, tomorrow we may all die there. He smiled with unnerving composure, fell silent, awed by the power of modern sorcerers she had estimated too low. She had rescued from oblivion, yet now she feared everything could unravel before she could fulfill her wishes. Addressed her seriously. Do not act rashly. Your current body is vital. Your memories might mislead judgment. If you die, if the vessel dies, everything collapses. If you and survive, our plan continues without obstruction. Understood, though it enraged her. She had envisioned saving, creating a new life together, only for modern sorcerers to ruin that dream. Glanced at her. Can you change back to your original appearance? I preferred that. He turned to, is the final finger with you? Shook his head. No, it's with Tokyo High, but don't worry, our plan will use the former body as a conduit. Nodded, nostalgic. Finger or no, without fundamental transformation, it's meaningless. Gods and Buddhas, he murmured. Returned to Tokyo High expressionless. Having released his time technique, he went straight to. Sighed, he recounted every detail, including the binding vow. Absorbed the information silently. After a long pause, he asked, Sensei, do we have any means to deal with souls? Considered, there's research on dealing with souls, but it's not practically applicable yet. He hesitated, then added, another individual surprisingly shows some affinity. It's unclear whether it's innate talent or something else, but he has a unique sensitivity we haven't explored fully. We planned to, but circumstances halted us. As gaze sharpened, so if we defeat tomorrow and rescue, we might still save. Nodded, theoretically yes, first we stabilize the situation, then even if can't, there are other options. Inhaled deeply, tamping down turmoil within. He opened his eyes, cold as ice. Wherever they flee, I will kill them, anyone involved. Placed a hand on his shoulder. I'll be there tomorrow too, besides, and we'll be in the dream realm. We will rescue and dream realm. The awakened slowly sat up, his senses alert. Around him was a narrow alleyway, familiar yet slightly distorted like a faded memory. He scanned his surroundings, already calculating his next move. Separated again, it was no surprise. Everyone who entered the dream realm at the same time had been scattered. His top priority was clear: find. Stepped out of the alley, moving cautiously through the empty street. As he walked, he left subtle marks behind, signs that only someone like would recognize. If saw them, he'd know was looking for him. I hope I find you quickly. You and can't afford to stay out there too long. His search hadn't gone far when fate intervened, though whether it was fortune or misfortune couldn't yet tell. He came across a familiar sight, a group chase. A handful of individuals sprinted through the street, clearly fleeing from others behind them. Both groups looked ragged and tense. The gap in power between them hadn't yet widened, likely because the game was still in its early stages. As standing alone on the street naturally drew attention. From a distance, the groups assumed he was just a bystander. The fleeing party deliberately changed course, rushing toward him. Their intent was unmistakable: use him as a distraction. And their pursuers, well, they weren't going to pass up the opportunity for a potential kill. In this realm where the supernatural power of reigned supreme, the hunger for strength was insatiable. Those who had chosen to enter the dream realm had already demonstrated they'd risk everything. Some had already awakened the initial forms of their cursed techniques. Though weak, the mere taste of power had warped their judgment. Greed, anger, ignorance. The three poisons dulled their minds and hardened their hearts. Caution was gone, morality forgotten. They were desperate to reach the finish line of this twisted game and seize the power that awaited them. So when they saw a lone, seemingly defenseless civilian, their choice was obvious. Kill him, then chase down the rest. The attackers charged, armed with crude weapons, but didn't flinch. He calmly assessed the battlefield. Ignore the fleeing group, focus on the pursuers, they were the threat. One attacker squinted, noticing something about's face. That guy, wait, isn't he? Recognition flickered in his eyes, but before he could finish the sentence, struck first. 5 in total, all had techniques, but their cursed energy was pitiful, their attacks were sloppy, their control clumsy. It didn't take long, dispatched them with precision, each strike calculated. When it was over, he stood in silence, barely winded, his cursed energy subtly replenished. There was no emotion in his eyes. The dream realm, this was his final chance, his opportunity to subjugate the last of the 10 shadows. The most dangerous and unpredictable of the 10. To defeat, he would need overwhelming combat strength. His evil prison dog and bull demon were powerful, yes, but not enough. Was different, a creature that could adapt endlessly to any technique or power used against it. Like a never-losing game of rock, paper, scissors, it would eventually overcome anything thrown at it. Unless it was obliterated in a single, overwhelming blow, would adapt, survive, and retaliate. Long ago, a N family head summoned in battle, dragging the family head, who wielded both limitless and 6 eyes into the subjugation ritual. The result, mutual destruction. To this day, no 10 Shadows user had ever successfully tamed. It was an eternal paradox. To defeat, you needed more power but you couldn't gain that power without defeating it. A dead end. But had a theory. A conjecture. He'd seen how the evil prison dog evolved into the bull demon through technique amplification. So what if he could amplify and fuse all 9, excluding into a single terrifying force? Would that be enough? The dream realm might offer the opportunity. There were fewer constraints here, fewer rules, more possibilities. All he needed was power. And if he had to become a butcher to acquire it, if he had to stain his hands and face judgment later, so be it. He glanced toward the trembling survivors from earlier. Not yet, he told himself. He gave them a warning instead, even offered a name as someone leading rescue efforts. Then he vanished off to hunt hunters. Elsewhere in the dream realm, stumbled through an eerily quiet cityscape. There weren't many players here, not yet. Was still reeling, in his mind the moment replayed again and again. Had stabbed him. Why, how could she? That kind sister had described, she couldn't. What if that wasn't really hers? Clenched his fists, more than his own pain, he worried about what this meant for. He must be hurting. But there was no time for grief, no way to reach the outside world. He had to survive here first. You have to kill 100 people to leave. The words echoed in his mind, a cruel condition. Hated it, he couldn't just kill random people to escape. No matter the justification, he wasn't that kind of person. What should I do? He sighed. It was pointless to dwell on it. Surely Sensei or someone else would come for them soon, right? For now, he needed to stay moving. Wandered the city for what felt like hours, finally encountering a lone player. The moment he greeted the person, they lunged without hesitation. Could sense the intent, pure malice. This opponent didn't have cursed energy. They barely registered above average, but they weren't an amateur, they were desperate. Didn't have any techniques himself, but that didn't matter. His physical prowess was absurd. Even without cursed energy, strength, speed, and endurance were leagues above the average human. In another life, he might been an Olympic legend or an ancient warrior praised in battle songs. Here in this distorted world was still a monster. He took the opponent down quickly. Surprised to still be alive, the defeated attacker looked up, panting. "Why didn't you kill me? I don't have any friends with me." Shook his head. "I won't kill you. You may face punishment, but it won't come from me." The man laughed bitterly. "What? Are you some kind of hero? Did you come here to save us?" His voice rose with anger. "Don't act so self-righteous. Everyone here chose this. We all knew what we were doing. We came here for power. And now you stand there like some saint preaching forgiveness. Spare me." Remained calm. "I didn't choose to come here. I was forced in, but that doesn't matter now." He took a deep breath, then spoke with quiet resolve. "Someone once told me if you can help someone, do it, as much as you're able. So I will, even if I can't save everyone here. If I can save even one person, then it's worth it." The man fell silent, turned, his steps steady as he walked away. In this twisted realm of greed and death, he would remain who he was, a boy who believed that saving even one life mattered. Game upgrade first stage. Each player will receive the location of the nearest player after completing one execution. Authenticity has been enhanced. More players will be deployed soon. May you achieve victory. The message echoed in the minds of everyone trapped within the barrier. The voice, unidentifiable by gender, rang faintly in their ears, repeating the message 3 times before vanishing. This sudden announcement naturally drew the attention of every participant, though the parts they focused on varied depending on their intent. For one thing stood out, the ability to obtain the location of the next closest player. It was perfect. No more wasted time, no more uncertainty. Goodbye. Calmly flicked his finger at a bloodied figure crawling away in fear. Though he held nothing, his motion carried a hidden force. Without warning, a bloody hole appeared in the victim's chest. Life vanished in an instant, and the body began to fade into the dream realm's ground. Remained still, eyes closed for a brief moment. Then he smiled faintly. He had received the new target's location. "Cursed energy, I'll claim this power, and after that I'll bring judgment." Was 22, his life had been smooth, excelling in academics and gaining admiration easily. Though his intelligence often made him distant, he masked it well. He was expected to live a normal and successful life, a stable job, a beautiful partner, and eventually a warm family. But that life was shattered by curses. The curse outbreak that changed the world left devastation in its wake. Though authorities did what they could, was among the unfortunate few personally impacted. The day it happened, he couldn't even recall how he got to the hospital. He only remembered standing in front of 2 mangled bodies, his parents, while men in black coats offered mechanical condolences. They told him a curse had attacked his neighborhood. His parents didn't survive. The most he got from their explanation was that the responsible sorcerers didn't respond in time. He alone arranged the funeral. He saw his parents' remains, half destroyed. What haunted him most wasn't just their deaths. It was that people told him he was lucky to even have bodies to bury after a curse incident. The curse that attacked his home should have been manageable. The only issue, the area's designated sorcerer failed to detect it early. They didn't issue an evacuation warning. The result, dozens died. The responsible sorcerer was punished, but with the shortage of manpower, it was nothing more than a slap on the wrist. They returned to their post like nothing had happened. Couldn't accept it. His sorrow twisted into fury. Where were the protectors, the heroes, the sorcerers? They said curses came from negative emotions. If so, why didn't his hatred give birth to one? Was his pain not enough? No, it was enough to destroy him. He thought about ending his life. That was the only logical conclusion to his grief. But then came the dream realm. It began with a dream. Something told him of a place where power could be attained, where cursed energy could be his. The cost, kill other players in a game-like world. He agreed instantly. If this world was built on monsters and bloodshed, then he'd become the worst monster of them all. Better to burn out than fade away. His first target was a girl, naive, curious, hopeful. She thought the dream realm was an adventure. He played the role of a kind stranger, lied through his teeth, misled her. And when she hesitated at the rules, when she faltered, he killed her. Yes, players revived eventually, but that didn't erase the horror on her face, or the part of himself he felt die in that moment. Was it guilt, regret, humanity? No, that's worthless. He crushed the feeling. That was the last time he'd hesitate. From there, the killing began. In the chaos, he awakened his cursed technique, empty motion. After testing it, he found it manipulated vibrations. Any motion he created, a punch, a snap, a flick, could carry violent energy. He could kill someone from afar, collapse buildings, amplify damage beyond physics. The more he killed, the stronger he grew. He could now trigger minor earthquakes with ease. Still, he knew it wasn't enough. The elite sorcerers on the live broadcasts were monsters. Their power was terrifying. Compared to them, was barely scratching the surface. But that didn't matter. He would keep fighting, keep killing, keep evolving. Until the very end. The new rules only helped. He could find players faster now, wasting less time. A guiding arrow appeared before his eyes, hovering unnaturally but clearly visible. It pointed him toward his next victim, a player hiding in a nearby structure. Didn't care about the person's type or strength. The result was already decided. Oh, shatter. He gathered cursed energy into his fist, then struck the air. The shockwave erupted violently, vibrations rippling out and twisting physics itself. The small building crumbled under invisible pressure, turning to dust and debris in seconds. Watched expressionless as the structure collapsed. The moment he felt the faint boost in power, he turned away, already seeking his next prey. Thanks to the new update, he no longer needed to hunt aimlessly. He was practicing relentlessly, refining his combat skills, pushing his technique's limits. If a sorcerer saw his progress, they'd call him a prodigy, but didn't see himself that way. He didn't want praise, he wanted power, more and more and more until the pain inside him was finally quiet. How many now? 1,000, 10,000, whatever, on to the next. He approached a new target, another player. This one stood confidently among a crowd. Osmerged. Hello, he said. Before I kill you, I'll let you say your names. The young man turned to him, unflinching. My name is, what are you going to do with me? Posed this question calmly. After his earlier display of strength, he had returned to being the ordinary high school student he was. He hadn't killed the other man because he believed the man still had a chance at redemption. He had seen it before, people who lashed out because of pain or misunderstanding. This one was no different. His hatred for sorcerers, while misguided, wasn't baseless. Understood not everyone in the world was like those at high. There were those who went astray, curse users, and others who twisted their ideals. but that didn't mean the entire system was rotten. So he made a choice, offer the man a chance. "You should come with me," said. "I can't let you go on like this, hurting others. If you hate the kind of people you believe are hypocrites, then be different. Come with me and save people instead. If you despise what this world has become, then become the kind of person you'd respect." The man stared at him, unreadable for a moment. His expression shifted, conflicted. But eventually he scoffed and turned his head, though not with the same hostility as before. "I'll watch your foolish dream and see it crumble." He was no longer trying to fight back. Maybe it was strength, or maybe some part of him was moved. But then he muttered under his breath, "No, I can't think that way. I need to see who you really are." Reminded himself of his original hatred. Still, when he saw stand and begin walking, he followed silently. "My name is what's yours?" asked. You don't need to know." Is not. The new rules of the Dream Realm, locating players after a successful kill, weren't much help to. He wasn't focused on hunting. As he made his way forward, he encountered several other players, none of whom were affiliated with High. Most were newcomers, drawn into the Dream Realm in pursuit of power despite the warnings from the authorities. Some were frightened, some were desperate, others had already begun spiraling. His first instinct was to reason with them. Many had yet to be hardened by the system. Some, once shown the truth, chose to step away from violence. And so his group began to grow. Still, not everyone accepted his hand. Some feigned surrender and tried to kill him. Some had abandoned their humanity altogether. Never claimed he could save everyone. He was just a teenager with strength. When it came down to it, he wasn't afraid to fight those who truly deserved it. The Dream Realm amplified strength through conflict, and as fought, his body, already a powerhouse, grew stronger. His cursed energy flourished. Still, he hadn't awakened a cursed technique. Whether it was because of how he entered or something innate, he didn't know, but he didn't let that slow him down. A strength was enough. As the team grew, it became easier to gain trust. New players saw safety in numbers. They joined without hesitation. Of course, not everyone believed. Some groups fled the moment they saw team. Others tried to attack, but the numbers were too large now. Few dared to fight openly. Didn't chase those who fled. He had no desire to spread more violence. But it didn't matter how big his team grew. Trouble found them anyway. It came in the form of a lone hunter. He stepped into the street ahead of them, fearless despite being outnumbered. Immediately sensed danger. This wasn't a rookie. The calm posture, the confident stance, this was someone dangerous. The man gave a slow smile and said, "My name is, and you are." Raised a hand to signal his team to stay back, then replied. Rolled up his sleeves, his smile sharp with malice. "Then all of you become my nourishment." He stomped the ground and the world shook. As instinct screamed, he leapt back, yelling for the others to retreat. And then the street exploded. The ground cracked and ruptured like something massive had awakened beneath it. Debris shot upward. The earth shattered into jagged fault lines. A barely maintaining balance was nearly buried. He shoved a chunk of stone off himself and turned. Screams echoed behind him. Some hadn't escaped in time. They were gone, buried in the collapse. And standing amid the rising dust was... "So fragile," he muttered, voice calm. The dust burst outward as if shoved by an invisible force, braced himself too late. A heavy, invisible strike sent him flying. He crashed into the ruined ground with brutal force, coughing up blood from the impact. What was that? One stomp had triggered an earthquake, now an invisible punch. What kind of cursed technique was this? There was no time to reflect, stepped through the dust like a demon made flesh. Still breathing, he said with amusement. He had never met someone who survived this long against him. It intrigued him. Scrambled up, using the broken terrain to close the distance, but raised a hand and fired another invisible punch. A rhythm of the void. This time saw it, a ripple in the air like reality itself cracking. Everything in its path, stone, metal, dirt, shattered into fine fragments. He knew it was coming straight for him. He reinforced his arms with cursed energy and crossed them to block. The impact landed like a train's. Bones snapped, his arms twisted unnaturally, white bone pierced through bloodied flesh. Still, he stayed conscious. He had to. If he died now, everyone else would be slaughtered. But was just getting started. He lifted both hands and began mimicking the motions of playing a piano. Each tap unleashed invisible blasts like cursed bullets. Saw one coming too late, a streak of blood crossed his cheek, then dozens more followed. Wounded, exhausted, broken, was overwhelmed. Blood exploded from his body as he collapsed again. Am I going to die, he thought. But death didn't come. A figure stepped between him and the next barrage. The man's back shielded him from the attacks, blood sprayed from him, and then he collapsed. Blinked in horror, it was one of his team members. Someone whose name he barely remembered, just a guy who had joined for hope. The man looked up with fatting eyes and smirked. Damn it, it's not like we die for real here, he muttered, coughing blood. But I hated those bastards too, couldn't bring myself to fight, so let me do this at least. His voice faded, his body dissolved. A boom. The earth shattered again and was crushed beneath the rubble. Satisfied with the small power boost, turned toward the rest of the group. Too many to count, but it didn't matter. One stomp, one sweep, they would all die. But then he paused. A familiar figure stood in front of him again, battered, bloodied, unbroken. You revived here, said amused. To die again, you think you can stall me for their sake? He chuckled, shaking his head. No need to worry, I'll kill them all anyway, and this is just the beginning. Technique amplification, snake. Under control, the shadow beneath his feet expanded rapidly. From the rippling darkness, dozens of serpentines slithered out, snakes, darting forward with only faint traces left in their wake. The enemy's offensive momentum was suddenly broken by his appearance. The man turned sharply, his fist launching into the air. A pulse of invisible energy burst outward, clearing the flying snakes in an instant. His voice was laced with relief and tension. Though his arrival was a welcome sight, he showed no expression of triumph. His gaze had already locked onto the opponent before them. Having died countless times in attempts to test his cursed technique, warned frantically, don't meet his attacks head-on. His technique can cause massive destruction even from a distance. But didn't even glance at, his attention was fixed on. You're with him, aren't you? You're definitely stronger than the last one. Didn't respond. Instead, he summoned another using his refined technique amplification, a towering beast. Larger and more savage than before, the monstrous radiated a presence approaching that of the deeply fused evil prison dog. This new was the result of relentless training. His cursed energy output had surpassed conventional levels, and his understanding of amplification techniques had grown exponentially. Chuckled, finally showing some genuine interest. Until now, he had been holding back to prevent his opponents from fleeing in fear. When and the others, foolishly brave, challenged him, he purposefully limited his attacks to keep them returning. This method of harvesting was more efficient under the Dream Realm's rules, where power transferred to the killer upon death. The stronger the victim, the more energy the killer gained. That made an ideal target. And they're just leftovers, though you're the main course, muttered with a twisted smile. Without hesitation, he charged forward, undeterred by his looming threat. The beast's tentacles lashed out, some fully transformed into shadows, allowing for immediate reconstruction if severed. His massive fists compressed the air as they struck toward. The man didn't flinch. He welcomed the impact, his arrogant smile glowing through the rising haze of cursed energy. He's not quite a monster in terms of raw cursed energy, but the destruction he causes is real, thought. Warning wasn't exaggerated. The moment their clash began, a tremor coursed through the ground. Surroundings distorted like a broken video reel. A single punch from dissolved form into a spray of shadows scattered by the shockwave. Dove into the ground through the shadows just in time. Darkness rippled across the shattered terrain before he emerged several meters away, gasping. "I'll get everyone out of here," he shouted. There was no doubt now, strength could obliterate like in one hit, and the others didn't stand a chance. Knew he hadn't yet completed his full mastery of the 10 Shadows technique. Fusing all 9 remained just out of reach. He couldn't defeat alone, but he might still escape. Meanwhile, had also realized the grim reality. Despite earlier attacks being survivable, it was clear now they were intentionally restrained. If he'd known's real power, he would fled sooner, but with survival saw a chance. He the small group of sorcerers who had stood beside him. Though looked like just another student, they trusted him without hesitation. They turned and retreated with heading for safety. Noticed the movement immediately. "Too late, where do you think you're going?" he said coldly. Inhaling deeply, he turned toward the fleeing group and roared, "Break." The single word tore through the air. Sound rolled forward like a crashing tsunami, shaking the atmosphere itself. The very ruins quaked and crumbled further, and the wave of sound surged towards group like a living storm. But just before impact, a massive blade cleaved down from above, interrupting the wave. Instinctively, the giant weapon belonged to a figure emerging from a cloud of shadows. An arm clad in obsidian armor held the blade aloft. From the center of the swirling shadows, something colossal stepped forth, adorned in black feathered armor, wielding twin swords and wearing a demonic mask. Evil Prison Dog's most advanced fusion had arrived. Without a word, it lunged at, blades flashing. The ground cracked beneath its feet. His eyes glinted with anticipation. Rhythm of the void, great void annihilation. His fists traced a deadly arc in the air. Just before contact, his cursed energy surged outward, releasing destructive vibrations that knocked the swords aside. But Evil Prison Dog was no ordinary construct. It was the amalgamation of 6 fused, and the new had mastered its every move. Even after the devastating blow, the creature held firm, its shadowy limbs repairing instantly. The broken swords dropped, melted into the ground, and were replaced by new ones from the shadows. Narrowed his eyes, this wouldn't be over quickly. What's worse, his ability to slip into the shadows made it impossible to corner him. The entire battle was a delay tactic. "If I destroy this thing, let's see how long you can last," muttered. Meanwhile was reaching his limit. Evil Prison Dog consumed a tremendous amount of cursed energy, and its repeated revivals, enhanced by Round Deer's fusion and its reverse cursed technique, was draining him fast. He was counting the seconds. If it gained enough distance, it was time to retreat, but abandoning those marked by the Dream Realm's rules, could he really do that? His thoughts were interrupted. His next strike came crashing down like thunder. Every collision shattered more ground, and Evil Prison Dog was flung back, rebuilt, and flung again. Bit his lip. This recovery rate, it's not just regeneration, it's Round Deer's ability at work, he realized. Evil Prison Dog wasn't merely reconstructing, it was healing through a reverse cursed technique. That's what made it different from ordinary cursed spirits. Finally felt the time was right. His cursed energy reserves were almost gone. It was now or never. Here it comes. It caught the moment of weakness. The fatting aura of Evil Prison Dog tipped him off. In one swift motion, he launched a full power strike, exploding the into black mist. He surged forward, targeting who was already phasing into the shadows. Converge the vibrations, limit the range, ultimate penetration. The impact tore through the void. Evil prison dog, barely reconstructed, intercepted the strike like a final defense. It shattered instantly. This time it didn't return. Didn't make it out unscathed. A gaping wound appeared across his chest, blood spurting from his lips, but he managed to slip into the shadows barely. Paused, eyes narrowing as he sensed aura vanish. Icha missed again, but we'll meet soon enough. Then the world seemed to pause. A familiar, emotionless voice echoed across the barrier, reaching every participant. Phase 2 reality increased. World scope reduced, escape conditions altered. This will be the final game. To bring about the rules we desire, this is the necessary price. Inside a dimly lit chamber stood face to face with. His tone was calm but calculated, explaining the setup behind the dream realm. It's not a bad idea for you to enter. Based on my estimates, if things reach the final stage, your technique will thrive in that environment. He paused, then added, if we manage to eliminate someone from high, that's just an added benefit. But our true objective is for the players to engage in slaughter, whether willingly or by force. From his sleeve, retrieved a small, this is the key to activate the final phase. When you use it as your call, it also comes with privileges like accelerating your power accumulation. He no longer bore his usual careless grin. Since the deaths of Hanami and Dagon, his purpose had sharpened. He didn't trust, far from it, but they shared a common goal. Sought to awaken and resurrect the golden era of from 1,000 years ago. That vision overlapped with the curse user's aim to restore the dominion of cursed spirits. Although Side had considerable strength, the number of monsters among the sorcerers was simply overwhelming. His unmatched power was beyond comprehension. Until facing him directly, no curse could have imagined such an insurmountable gap. And wasn't the only one. Another figure, one who manipulated time, had narrowly allowed them to survive once. Since then, even had avoided any direct confrontation with that sorcerer. The crushing pressure of such foes had once pushed them to despair. That was when proposed his plan to create an existence capable of standing toe-to-toe with the highest level of sorcerers. The foundation of this plan was to construct a parallel curse era. That way, even if they couldn't defeat the altered balance of the world would render future outcomes impossible to predict. Even if we don't get to see the new world ourselves, just knowing it's possible is enough. That belief had driven, and now to embrace death and sacrifice. Their lives and even their bonds were the price of ignition. But they believed it was worth it. Every great inferno begins with a spark, so what if they had to be the firewood? The curse era, the barrier, and now the dream realm, each element was a brick in the foundation of the final battle. Titles like Special Grade Sorcerer or Special Grade Curse were mere illusions. In the end, only absolute combat power determined who would win the war between humans and curses. Unfortunately, and the others weren't yet at that pinnacle. Even for all his genius and manipulation lingered in the shadows. If he were truly that powerful, he wouldn't need puppets. But the vision at the end of their paths, that might be real. Had already sacrificed everything and had also committed fully to the mission. All that was left was to allow the game to play out. If they could also eliminate the vessel of along the way, even better. It didn't matter if the dream realm birthed a new generation of sorcerers. Their growth was still limited by the realm's rules. A single misstep, a single moment too slow, could mean the difference between survival and death. The rule was simple: to gain something, one must lose something. This binding vow was as much philosophy as it was power, and his allies were willing to forfeit their very selves. What did a few rising sorcerers matter? Only the final piece, the ultimate existence, would determine the outcome of the conflict. The dream realm. After escaping the confrontation, summoned Round Deer to stabilize his wounds. Then, using the link left by Rabbit Escape, he followed the trail and caught up to and his group, who were still on the move. The rule about guidance. Before could even ask about's condition, cut in with concern. He referenced one of the newly added rules, guidance, which could mean a direct tracking system from their enemies. Understood immediately. Likely had another tracking signal targeting someone among them. If they didn't eliminate that target or resolve the issue, running would be pointless. Had already anticipated this and made preparations, the basic solution splitting up. They designated a rendezvous point in advance. The Dream Realm wasn't just a maze of buildings, it included unique landmarks. After establishing the meeting place, the group divided. Several volunteers led smaller groups along alternate paths. If caught up, the marked person would break away again. This would continue until they lost him with minimal casualties. They even ran into other hunters along the way, but that was better than running alone. It was clear now that the updated rules benefited hunters heavily, clearly the work of someone behind the scenes. Then there was the new rule set labeled Phase 2. Among these changes, one in particular chilled heart, the exit condition. It had shifted dramatically. Previously, one needed to kill 100 people to exit. Now, that number was reduced to 1. But such a drastic reduction came with a caveat. The new rule stated that a sorcerer must reach a designated safe point in the center of the Dream Realm to exit. At first glance, it sounded easier, but for it reeked of a trap. Whoever had dragged into the Dream Realm clearly had a plan, and that new rule likely existed to lure them in. Had to escape as soon as possible. Didn't need to think twice. Someone would be waiting at that so-called safe point, either to kill or worse. Their only options were charge in and risk ambush, or grow stronger first and delay the confrontation. When shared this with, the latter looked grim. He was caught in the same dilemma. Also gave him an update on the outside world. Though Sensei and were active, the situation involving remained unresolved. Few sorcerers specialized in soul techniques. According to, there was one student from Kyoto with a soul-related ability, but it only worked on herself. They could only offer academic insight, not healing. And to save soul, their best hope was, recently it had been discovered that possessed a rare affinity for soul influence. It was part of why he could suppress. That made him their priority for extraction. "I'm sorry, I should left sooner," said quietly. But shook his head. He didn't blame him. He knew wouldn't kill innocents just to escape, even at the cost of his own life. Held stronger principles than most. It wasn't that he feared death or violence, he simply held to his ideals. That's why he had spent his time defeating hunters, trying to meet the conditions honorably, but helping people had slowed his progress. At one point had felt a flicker of resentment, but he reminded himself was just being, that guilt wasn't his to bear. Himself would probably abandon strangers to save his sister, but how could he condemn someone who chose differently? "Enough," said, changing the subject. "This rule is targeting us. We need to strengthen ourselves immediately. There's no other choice." Nodded. With the Dream Realm shrinking and hunters becoming more aggressive, the opportunity to grow stronger would come faster. Also revealed his plan, to complete his final technique amplification and attempt to subjugate inside the Dream Realm. With both of them reunited, regrets were no longer useful. The only thing they could do now was move forward. "Let's go, we don't have much time left." Changes in the Dream Realm reflected its illusory, shifting nature. The most immediate alteration, the shrinking of the realm's scope, occurred without warning. One moment, tall buildings lined the streets, and the next, they vanished like a mirage, too abruptly to determine if they had ever been there at all. This spatial constriction, paired with the expanding influence of the realm's effects, made the third game the largest yet in terms of scale. On the surface, the rules seemed designed to reduce casualties, with official guidance warning players and encouraging caution. But in truth, this state was already the result of significant prior success. The first game had served its purpose, eliminating weaker participants or capturing survivors who were either consumed by the barriers or detained by sorcerers. The second game saw intervention from others, leading to a few individuals managing to fulfill the conditions to escape. To compensate for this and meet their ultimate objective, faction invoked a binding vow altering the Dream Realm's mechanics. The result? A final, massive wave of involuntary participation, a strategic pull that brought in both civilians and sorcerers. And though the rules had changed to make the game easier to survive, it hinged on one condition: those who entered could not act recklessly. That's precisely what his group were doing now. After rendezvousing with the rest of their allies at the designated meeting point, they gathered to assess the aftermaths. According to the accounts of his companions, learned that had pursued the split-off team. As expected, they were wiped out. What surprised everyone was attitude. He didn't interrogate, question, or threaten. He simply appeared, executed those he found, and moved on as if they were just obstacles in his way. And couldn't discern intentions, but they knew that wasn't the most urgent issue. Their focus now was the group of berserk hunters scattered throughout the Dream Realm, players who had gone mad chasing power. Needed them. With so many people relying on him, he required their energy, a form of spiritual currency embedded in the Dream Realm's mechanics, to increase his strength and help others escape. Fortunately, the rule changes made it easier to accomplish this. "This new level of realism is insane," remarked. "Techniques feel no different than in the real world. Come to think of it, shouldn't I have awakened a technique by now, or do I not have one?" He scratched his head, perplexed. Awakening a cursed technique was a prerequisite for becoming a player in the Dream Realm, or at the very least, the potential to awaken one. The Dream Realm simply accelerated that process. "Maybe you didn't enter the normal way," replied. "It's possible they forced you in using some other method." Had no answer. He remembered gaining raw cursed energy when defeating those deranged hunters, but that was it, no sense of a true technique forming. "What about you?" asked. "How close are you to being ready?" Stood still, enveloped in dark ribbons of shifting shadow. They clung to him like a living aura, his form of the 10 Shadows technique. These shadows were highly efficient, barely consuming cursed energy and able to transform into instantly. They also honed his control over his power. 2 more days passed inside the Dream Realm. During that time, continued clashing with insane hunters, eliminating them without mercy to strengthen himself. He had reached the point where merging with evil prison dog no longer strained him. Yet when he attempted to integrate certain, like rabbit escape, he faced resistance. It seemed 9 was the current limit for fusion. And each attempt to go beyond that nearly drained him completely. The final entity he sought to summon, always just a breath away, refused to materialize, hovering on the edge of emergence from the ever-surging shadows. "The time difference here gives us some breathing room," said. "At this pace, I should be ready in 2 or 3 days." He spoke calmly, but his movements betrayed the urgency building within. Had he not retained his discipline, or had not been nearby, he might already succumb to the temptation of rushing headlong into power. As they walked the streets, looked around warily, then turned to. "I'm thinking of bringing these people with us when we leave." He kept his senses alert while replying. "In theory, that's possible, but someone will definitely be guarding the safe point. If we can beat them, the rest should be easy," added. "If we can't, wait, someone's nearby." This warning came instantly. His instincts screamed danger. But when they turned, what they saw wasn't a threat, it was 2 familiar faces and Maki. Their arrival was a surprise, and after a moment of recognition, both groups exchanged information. explained that upon entering the dream realm, he had quickly eliminated several hunters seeking to kill him. He then met Maki, whose heavenly restriction granted her immense strength, more than enough to overpower standard opponents. She had entered under unusual circumstances. After learning the new rules of the game, both had anticipated that team would head to the central safe point, and their hunch proved right. A powerful sorcerer awakened here, repeated, frowning after hearing about bad news. Sensei's theory was correct. My technique doesn't function here. It's the only exception. My experience and cursed energy are intact, but I can't use my core abilities. I won't be much help outside of basic support. Knew that wasn't entirely true. Even without his technique, was still a top-tier fighter. The fact that he had survived this long proved that. Still, it was clear the Dream Realm suppressed certain specialized techniques, much like domain expansions and summoning. Maki, on the other hand, was thriving. Her raw physical power was increasing, perhaps because of the way the Dream Realm adapted to her heavenly restriction. She tore through hunters with ease, her body evolving in strength and sharpness with every battle. It was as if her restriction was becoming more perfect, an impossible development, but not one they could afford to dwell on. After hearing's plan quickly agreed. He offered to stay behind with Maki and protect the group while and made their moves. Now only final preparations remained. Back at their temporary base, the refugees who had survived this far recognized immediately. Their morale skyrocketed. If was with them, then hope of escape felt real again. As moved through the city one last time, he brought back another small group. Survivors who now understood the truth of this twisted place and wished to escape. By then, his cursed energy reserves had reached an unprecedented level. He was far stronger than his real-world counterpart. The technique amplification that once strained him now flowed effortlessly. Most importantly, he had mastered the fusion of 9 Shadow, but as feared, could not be summoned here, just like domain expansions were blocked. The Dream Realm couldn't fully simulate certain conditions, but that was fine. This power would be enough. Let's go, said. Everything was in place. Whether they could get out and deal with what lay ahead would be decided in the next battle. And began their advance toward the central safe point while Maki stayed behind. Their objective was different. They aimed to resolve one of the key threats inside the Dream Realm. The safe point was located in a plaza at the city's heart, marked by a nondescript building. According to the rules, it was the only true safe zone. Once inside, no one could use cursed techniques or even harm others. Total neutrality. Strangely, the path to the safe point was deserted. No players, no hunters, just empty streets, abandoned intersections, and an eerie stillness. That's when they saw him. Standing alone in front of the safe point was a figure both familiar and terrifying. He said you'd come around this time, didn't expect him to be right, said casually as if they were arriving late to a meeting. Focused on his phrasing. Their arrival had been predicted. Someone had foreseen their path, possibly leaked it. Either there was a traitor among them or someone was observing from above. And then from behind, another figure stepped forward. The moment they saw his face and expressions turned to stone. Surprised. A smile was like a flower blooming in sewage, brilliant, beautiful, and utterly filthy, just like his entire existence. He now stood opposite and, seeing the two of them alone, sneered. Where are the others? I was hopping for a little more fun, but don't worry, they won't stay hidden for long. Stared down, the weight of his past atrocities flashing through his mind, and he knew those were likely just the beginning. Despite his anger, didn't lose his edge. The sudden appearance meant something bigger. He wasn't convinced had been an ally from the start. Most players in the Dream Realm were regular people unlike, but now was here too clearly in league with, which could only mean one thing. It made sense. His presence was meant to stall them, to delay or even prevent awakening so that chaos could erupt in the real world. "You don't think you can take us on alone, so you found yourself a partner," said coldly. "I wonder how you even convinced him." They'd already seen what was capable of, was a nightmare on his own. His presence here only made sense if he had a plan. From his shadow, a rabbit escape darted away. Then several other appeared, forming a defensive ring around him. He caught sight of the rabbit escape and laughed mockingly. "Trying to send a message? Don't bother. Once I finish with you, they'll follow soon enough." When had first approached, the latter's first instinct was to kill him, but wasn't weak. He'd survived the initial attack and made a proposition that stayed's hand. Even though it was a curse, something detested, his offer had weight, claimed to have partial control over the dream realm. That and the promise of reshaping the rules appealed to Skulls. In exchange, needed's help to eliminate and his allies. They struck a temporary deal, both planning to betray the other once their interests no longer aligned. Under his guidance, they stormed the city center and began hunting down players. The safe zone naturally attracted survivors and hunters alike. Welcomed this, he could wipe them out and grow stronger in the process. Together, he and reigned like predators atop the food chain for days, waiting for and to arrive. "You're the final obstacles," declared. "Once I kill you and harvest the dream realm, I'll stand alone at the top and then..." His words were interrupted by a rumble. With a heavy stomp cracked the earth beneath their feet, the battle had begun. Jumped to evade the quake but was caught midair by a sharp, unseen force. He twisted just in time, but a deep gash opened on his arm, bone visible. His arm had morphed into a pale, blade-like appendage. Pulled back, legs bending unnaturally, and launched forward with terrifying speed. At the same time, rocketed toward like a human cannonball. Summoned evil prison dog and rope-like tendrils shot from his shadow, latching onto debris and yanking him away from the cracked ground. The evil prison dog leapt forward, gripping a twin shadow blade in its jaws. It slashed fiercely at who clenched his fist and tanked the blow with his bare body. A shockwave blasted outward, the force of the impact shaking the city around them. An absolute void law. His hands glowed with dense, cursed energy. He stretched them through the air, manipulating invisible threads. Waves of pressure surged outward, not as devastating as his finishing move from before, but fast, layered, and relentless. The evil prison dog swung its twin blades, the arc of light forming a silver crescent. But some of its attacks slipped through, tearing open deep gashes on this body. "Your summon's gotten better," said taunting. "Guess you weren't slacking off." While the evil prison dog reeled under the pressure, closed the distance between them. Sharp eyes caught his stance, two fingers pressed together. "I call this one Piercing Star. Let's see if you can dodge it again." Even before it landed, the pressure was suffocating. New had grown stronger, likely from massacring other players to amass power. His next summon, but the invisible strike was already flying toward his forehead. He couldn't see it, but he could feel it. Just before it struck, the shadows beneath him surged upward. A giant mouth formed and swallowed him whole. The shadow reformed into a thin strip, then shattered under the impact of its attack, was gone. Scanned the area, frowning. Only remained, still fending off its attacks. Stomped the ground, flinging rubble at the evil prison dog before turning his attention back to the battlefield. Moments later, resurfaced from the earth, dozens of meters away, shadows rippling beneath him. He'd used his toad to escape into the shadows just in time. The evil prison dog could fight head-on, but it lacked crowd control, had easily bypassed it, knew he was lucky to be alive. "Oh, should I use that technique?" The thought crossed his mind, but he shoved it away. Hadn't gone all out yet, it was too early to show his trump card. A great serpent, rabbit escape. Two more emerged. The serpent coiled protectively around while the rabbits bounced in every direction, creating confusion. His cursed energy had improved a lot, enough to maintain all three simultaneously, even in their energy-conserving forms. His eyes narrowed, still hiding behind toys, or are you waiting for your friend to die first? A glance toward, he was being pushed further away, barely keeping at bay. Eyes on me, sorcerer. A great void shatter. His punch cracked the air, the evil prison dog blocked it, but its twin blades shattered. Its armor crumbled. Even the mask split apart, revealing writhing shadow beneath. Still, it stood firm. The damage was grave, but not fatal. The evil prison dog had merged with Round Deer, giving it a healing factor. Unless it was completely obliterated, it would recover. Didn't care, with a calm expression, he raised his fist again. Surge, do you want to return to your body? Then you'd better fight harder, otherwise, who knows what might happen. His laughter echoed in his ears, each chuckle a taunt laced with malice. Whenever his focus wavered for even a moment, his relentless attacks surged in. Even in the dream realm, strength was terrifying. From the very beginning, had been forced into constant defense. His idle transfiguration allowed him to alter his form in grotesque ways, making each assault unpredictable. Could only manage to hold his ground because of how far he had grown in this realm. But's voice carried more than just cruelty now, it held something cryptic, something unnerving. Do you know what the dream realm really is? With a thundering slam, a massive pincer-like limb came crashing down, barely dodged in time. The ruins beneath were shredded like tofu. A split second later, his arm morphed into a blade and slashed across his chest, leaving a fresh crimson gash. This realm exists through consciousness and also touches the soul, so what do you think will happen if my technique hits you? The words sent a chill through his spine. He remembered what little he knew about soul mechanics. Sure, the dream realm allowed resurrection after death, but what if his technique ignored those rules? Had previously studied soul-based knowledge from multiple sources. Ancient texts from the Big Three families, experimental data left behind by a student at Kyoto High, and even fragments had collected during her overseas travels. Those were supposed to be top-secret records, but with the support of And, had been able to access and study them. It had all started with, because of the King of Curses inside him, believed needed to understand soul mechanics, and as a result had discovered a strange talent for it. Normally, a sorcerer couldn't perceive their own soul precisely. At best, they might protect it passively when wrapping their bodies in cursed energy, but special cases, like the student in Kyoto named, were rare. This was why his technique was so dangerous. Even couldn't reverse the transformations caused by idle transfiguration. Soul damage couldn't be healed by the reverse cursed technique. If altered his soul here, would that mean a true death? No, if he could really kill me that easily, he wouldn't be talking about it, he'd just do it. Forced himself to focus. Knowing his twisted personality, he concluded it was likely part truth, part trap. Whatever the case, he couldn't afford to dwell on it. Instead, he had to focus on breaking this stalemate, and Clash had already left the battlefield in chaos, and could feel his stamina depleting quickly. His rabbit escape had already been sent, Maki and might be on the way, but they'd need time. He had to hold on. You're thinking too hard again, aren't you? Sneered. His form writhed unnaturally. His body now resembled a boneless mollusk, soft and grotesque, with jagged blades protruding from his skin as his only remaining weapons. I didn't lie, you know, I just wanted to mess with your head a little. Two arms emerged from his pliable mass. With the distance now closed, was in a dangerous spot, and he knew it. Outside the dream realms, technique would barely work on because of his presence, but here, in a space detached from his curse, stood alone. And now he couldn't dodge. Then I'll counterattack. He chose not to run, not to block, but to strike back with everything he had. His cursed energy surged as he poured all his power into a punch aimed directly at his deformed face. To his surprise, didn't even try to dodge. The punch landed square in the face and seemed to enjoy it. But at the same time, his hand touched his abdomen. It wasn't a lethal hit, just a simple palm strike, yet froze. In that moment, something changed. His cursed energy dipped and his aura visibly weakened. He kicked away with a powerful blow, putting space between them. Reformed from his gelatinous state, his twisted face snapping back into shape as he grinned with perverse glee. "Did you feel that?" he asked. "It's working, isn't it?" His expression darkened. That simple touch had drained something vital. He hadn't died, but his total energy had dropped. Which meant it could steal power, just like killing someone, even without killing them outright. Trembled with fury. The thought of other players being drained this way, of them vanishing forever without even a chance to revive. It's disgusting. Beamed at him, the more despised him, the more he reveled in it. That's the spirit, I knew you'd understand. Then his gaze shifted behind. Two figures sprinted across the broken cityscape. Help had arrived. Maki and, having received signal through Rabbit Escape, they had rushed to the battlefield after helping coordinate the surviving player groups. The moment they arrived, they saw the situation, locked in combat with and cornered by a special grade curse. That's muttered, recognizing the threat. He immediately made a judgment call. Side was in greater danger, could still manage against, but looked close to collapsing. Landing beside, asked urgently, "What's the situation?" "Don't let him touch you," warned. "His technique still works in the dream realm. I didn't die, but I lost energy." That's bad." Frowned. If every touch could be fatal, then his attacks were as dangerous as they came. Letting the battle drag on was not an option. Called, summoning his greatest ally. A surge of powerful cursed energy manifested beside him. A small figure stepped forth, long black hair, a delicate frame, and an eerie calm. Though she appeared like the gentle girl she once was, her aura in the dream realm carried all the destructive weight she had in the real world. Be careful." At his side, she smiled sweetly, then her form shifted. Within seconds, she transformed into her full combat state, ready to fight. "I'll take him on at close range," Maki said, gripping a heavy iron rod she'd looted from the dream realm. "As long as he doesn't touch me, I'll be fine." The four of them formed an assault team, at the front and Maki flanking her and providing support despite his weakened state. His new form bulged grotesquely. He swelled into a towering mass with 4 massive limbs and a humanoid torso rising from the center. 2 oversized arms extended from his chest, 10 long, blade-like fingers twitching ominously. The battle began. Struck first, her overwhelming strength pushing back, followed up, slicing its arms. Maki darted in with precise hit-and-run tactics, landing powerful blows with her iron staff, attacked from range, forcing to shift his attention constantly. His massive body looked formidable, but his attacks began to miss. He was taking damage, blood sprayed from deep gashes, his limbs were cracking under pressure. Narrowed his eyes, something was off. Wasn't just retreating, he was bidding time. And then it happened. Landed a devastating blow. Her hands pierced straight through his midsection, tearing his body apart. But just smiled. His core body, now emerging from the shattered mass of flesh, gleamed with sadistic joy. The battlefield had shifted far away from its location. Perfect. A crack. A sharp shattering noise echoed. Everyone turned, but it was already too late. A dark barrier rose around them, swallowing the battlefield whole. A voice echoed across the space. Domain expansion, self-embodiment of perfection. Domain expansion, how is that possible? Isn't it unusable in the dream realm? His breath caught in his throat as the pitch-black barrier took form around. Both he and had attempted domain expansion in this realm before, but it never worked. Yet here it was undeniably real. Then came the voice. That familiar, chilling system voice echoed again, the same one that had broadcasted the new rules across the dream realm. This idle transfiguration immediately struck, and the others, its sure-hit effect activating within the domain. Didn't even need to be attacked directly, he could feel it. Something was being drained from him. His cursed energy, his physical strength, his very essence. In mere seconds, body weakened noticeably. The sharp edge of his combat ability dulled. A domain expansion, pure land of reincarnation. Without hesitation, activated his own domain expansion. He had to save and Maki from his influence, even if it cost him everything. The clash of domains never came. Just before his barrier formed fully his own. A moment later, he activated a simple domain, allowing himself to be safely caught within space. But knew this wouldn't change the outcome. His domain's power was built around replicating an opponent's technique, using it to create a mirror image. But again, he failed. He couldn't mimic's cursed technique. That made his domain an empty shell, useless. Seeing this, promptly deactivated it, emerged unscathed, smirking with confusion at sudden retreat. Why not use it, afraid of what'll happen, mocked. The truth was simpler, had already won the opening exchange. The moment his domain activated, he'd stolen a portion of his power. Now he held the upper hand, and a domain clash was a risk he didn't need to take. Knowing the gamble wouldn't pay off, backed out before he wasted more strength. Had nothing to fear now, and his decision only added to his confusion. Oh, damn it. Maki clenched her fists. Her body felt slower, heavier, had warned them about this effect, but experiencing it firsthand was worse than expected. The weakening wasn't just physical, it felt like her spirit was being compressed. Their earlier advantage had flipped, now was hunting them. How do we fight him now? Maki asked sharply. Had transformed again, his technique was escalating and their options were shrinking. Each second they dragged this out gave him time to dismantle them completely. Right now was tanking most of the damage, but even she was being pushed back. Saw it too, they needed to retreat, stay and they'd be slaughtered, run, and it was only a matter of time before caught up. The side won't resolve quickly either, we may have to pull back. His gut instinct was to resist. Retreat now, and everything, his body in the real world's sister, their last hope, might be lost. Wouldn't stop hunting them, and they'd only grow weaker with time. But what choice did they have? On the far side of the battlefield, the flickering of a black domain barrier caught his attention even while he fought. His clashed with their foe, but his mind processed the implications quickly. So the realism level of the dream realm has increased. Domains can now be used here. That changed everything. He now had the option of fusing the 9 shadows, using domain expansion to lock it in. It could turn the tide against. But it wasn't without risk. What if also new domain expansion? A failed domain clash would result in technique burnout, a dangerous state where even fundamental cursed techniques couldn't be accessed. If that happened, his plan to fuse the 9 shadows would collapse entirely. Does no domain expansion. As if in answer, paused and glanced its battle with an unreadable look before turning back. You understand what's happening, don't you? He said with a cold grin. You know domain expansion too, don't you? So why haven't you used it yet? Well, it's too late. A domain expansion. As worst-case scenario had come true, did know it. He had seconds to decide, engage in a domain clash or attempt the fusion now before his domain fully activated. The barrier had already begun to rise. He thought of Maki, he thought of still waiting in the real world. If he failed now, they would all fall. A technique amplification. A 10 directions annihilation. The black barrier engulfed them. The scenery changed in an instant, was no longer on solid ground, no ground existed. He floated in endless void, the concept of up and down meaningless. He felt something solid beneath him, but when he looked down, there was only shadow and emptiness. Hovered nearby, a look of serenity and obsession in his eyes. I just learned this technique recently, said calmly. Thanks to that stitched-faced freak, not someone I trust, but I'm grateful. This is the power I've longed for. A thrill crept into his voice. This is true, I you all for having it, but now this power is mine, and I'll use it to take everything back. As he spoke, he kept his eyes on the rolling tide of shadows around. He wasn't careless, he knew better. Then struck, a simple punch, but in this space, the effect was catastrophic. The void trembled, felt the vibrations penetrate him, shaking the very structure of his body. The tremors didn't just echo, they clung to him, intent on tearing him apart. His bones strained, his organs shuddered. If this continued, he wouldn't even leave behind a corpse. But suddenly, the pressure lifted. Something pushed the tremors back, as though a greater force had taken the field. The shadows beneath expanded, shaping themselves into solid ground. A dark tide surged forward, forming a platform dozens of meters wide. From its center, a massive presence emerged. The first thing visible was its jaw, a snout covered in scales, sleek and regal. Then came whiskers, fur, branching antlers, and a winding, serpentine body. It floated effortlessly in the air, wingless, yet more majestic than anything with feathers could ever hope to be. It was a dragon. Its head alone was as large as a building. Its golden eyes opened slowly, staring down with an impossible weight. The sky rumbled with its breath. A myth had entered the battlefield. A dragons muttered. This wasn't the Western kind, no wings, no lizard-like bulk. This was a divine Eastern dragon with the antlers of a stag, eyes like a rabbit, ears like an ox, claws of a tiger, and a body like a serpent. It radiated primal divinity. Thunder crackled around it. The sky itself seemed to bow before it. Its earlier attack, so powerful it could tear reality, was dismissed in an instant by its presence alone. This was the fusion of the 10 shadows, every combined, not just merged but reborn. Tiger, dog, deer, toad, snake, elephant, each trait was embedded into this form. No single part was dominant. They worked in perfect harmony, elevating each other beyond what should have been possible. More than summoning. This was ascension. The colossal dragon hovered in the void, a realm where heaven and earth had ceased to exist. Its sharp horns gleamed, majestic scales shimmered, and long whiskers fluttered as if stirred by an unseen force. Crackling lightning tore through the empty sky, mirroring the tension brewing on the battlefield. A new shadow-style simple domain. Dropped into a martial stance. Despite its appearance, it was a technique designed to counter the guaranteed hit effect of a domain expansion. Remained inside's domain, but he had a plan to fight back. Stared at the colossal beast summoned before him, a divine dragon born of the 10 shadows technique, more terrifying in presence than the faced samurai from earlier. His fighting spirit surged with anticipation. I didn't expect you to hold back a technique like this. You've made this worth it, now I can crush you without any regrets. He clenched his fist and launched another punch. Within his domain, every strike carried amplified force. This one split the air, leaving behind pitch-black cracks that rapidly spread like spiderwebs. Stayed calm, he'd been preparing for this moment. The fusion of the 9 shadows had given birth to a new and apex creation. At last, he grasped the full potential of the N clan's inherited technique, the 10 shadows technique. Before now, even without, the 10 shadows were powerful but far from supreme, so had pushed the boundaries. His first theory had been to sacrifice all previous to transfer their strength into one final creation, but he had no desire to lose them forever, and it was too risky. If the result failed, everything would be lost. His second approach involved technique amplification, merging to create evolved versions. Fused had already shown great promise. When further fused into evil prison dog, it became clear, combining all 9 shadows would unlock something far greater. And it had. His tireless trials in the dream realm had birthed this dragon, heavenly calamity, an entity that embodied all 9's abilities. Max Elephant's water controls, lightning, and more had been absorbed and refined. Every trait had amplified exponentially. The current lightning storm, vast and violent, was proof of that. The bolts crackled black, cloaked in heavenly calamity's cursed energy. Yet this lightning wasn't evil. It radiated majesty, awe, and divine punishment. The space-distorting punch landed, tearing a rift through the air. But when it collided with the dragon's lightning, it only worsened the distortion, never overcoming it. The two forces clashed, moved subtly, directing the immense, winding dragon body in front of him. Heavenly calamity took the brunt of the attack. The strike ripped through the void, striking the dragon directly. A massive section of heavenly calamity's body was torn away, leaving gaping wounds. Shattered scales fell like meteors, and black blood sprayed skyward before evaporating in the lightning storm. But for a creature of its size, the damage was negligible. The 2 glowing white horns atop its head shimmered faintly, activating Round Deer's healing ability. In an instant, the torn body was restored. That was only one of its many gifts. Now came retaliations. Heavenly calamity surged forward, black lightning flooding the domain like a tide. Shouted with gritted teeth, break. Cursed energy exploded from his body. He countered with a punch empowered by all his strengths. A black void opened before him, an abyss that devoured light and space. It clashed violently with the dragon's lightning, the 2 forces canceling each other out in a blinding burst. His voice was calm, heavenly calamity. The massive dragon twisted in midair, then dived straight toward, its charge growing more powerful with every moment. As it neared, its jaws opened, revealing another mouth formed entirely of cursed energy, larger and more savage. A roar. The void echoed with a soul-shaking roar, felt the pressure instantly. Just being in its path strained his domain. Piercing ox, tiger funeral, savage bite. A brutal fusion technique, simple in structure, devastating in execution. Yet didn't retreat. A heaven's cleave. He raised his fist again. This time the space itself seemed to fold under its weight. His punch dragged the void along with it, warping the domain like a canvas being torn. The instant the dragon struck, the impact overwhelmed fragile domain. A crack. A clean sound, then silence, his domain shattered like glass. He hadn't yet mastered his domain expansion. 10 directions annihilation collapsed under the force of the attack. And reappeared in the real world alongside the enormous dragon. The scene captured everyone's attention. Battling and the others nearby looked up. The overwhelming cursed energy from heavenly calamity consumed the entire field. So this guy, he's just a student? That's not something I expected. May have reached his limit. Let's see if he has the resolve to go beyond it. With that, grotesque body began to change. The monstrous form shrank, refining into a leaner build, now about 2 meters tall. His human shape was gone, only the blade-like extensions of his fingers remained, forming claws sharp enough to split the air. He launched another brutal assault. Back on the battlefield, acted without hesitation. He directed heavenly calamity upward, the dragon's body now encased in pure black lightning. It had become a thunder dragon. The electric aura spread around it, forming another dragon-shaped outline over its body. Froze for a brief moment, stunned by the pressure, but he reacted on instinct, punching the ground. Earth surged upward, slamming into the dragon's charge to disrupt its paths. It worked barely. Using the brief pause, flashed from sight, reappearing beside the dragon's head. His final reserves of cursed energy flared to life. Oh, he struck. The blow destabilized the dragon, knocking it into the ground. Its body plowed through the battlefield, raising dust and debris like waves in a sea. But the roar of a furious beast erupted once more. From beneath the rubble, the thunder dragon rose, maw wide open. A violent torrent of water surged from its mouth, shaped by cursed energy. Dragons, serpents, and beasts formed within the flood. Then lightning fused into the current, forming a net of black electric arcs. Domain tried but failed. His energy and body were exhausted. There was nothing left. Still, he didn't give in. He faced the incoming attack head-on. He ripped through the lightning net, broke apart the water-formed beasts, but the dragon's mouth kept growing closer. He swung his fist one last time. It wasn't enough. The bite landed. Disappeared inside Heavenly Calamity's jaws, his final thoughts unraveling. Am I really going to lose? Is this how it ends? If I accept his offer, can I still say I chose my own path? But I can't let it end here. I won't accept defeat. Though he is established. His body began to fade, consciousness slipping into a brief void, until a warm light flickered into view before his eyes. The scene sharpened, revealing the source of that light, a feminine silhouette glowing with sacred brilliance. Yet something was wrong. Her form was draped in phantom gray-black hues that grew unstable the longer you stared, eventually bursting like an overstuffed kaleidoscope. Colors spun in every direction, surreal and chaotic, until the illusion collapsed like a vanishing dream. Though had never explained this phenomenon, instinctively understood. This was the dream realm, the true manifestation of the pact he had agreed to. A transaction that offered immense gain at a price just as severe. Had once dismissed the as unnecessary, accepting it only as a precaution. He never thought he'd actually activate it. But now he had no choice. The is established. The foundation of the dream realm came from a powerful cursed spirit under his control, an entity known as the Dream Eater. Long hidden from the world due to its strange nature, it was not something normally found in reality. With his centuries of experience, unearthed such secrets. After possessing his body, he used cursed spirit manipulation to subjugate the Dream Eater. Yet the spirit alone wasn't enough to realize the dream realm. It took two ancient cursed objects, the mirror and the no. By combining their power with the Dream Eater and destroying them in the process, completed his miracle, a space where dreams could be made real. Entrusted with a shard of that miracle, they used it for two purposes: to alter the dream realm's rules in favor of the villains and to seal a pact with. His talents were undeniable. His cursed technique, mindset, and adaptability all pointed to potential greatness, but didn't want to leave it to chance. So that was created, dormant until accepted. The terms were clear. By accepting, would receive the raw power of the dream realm. In return, he would sacrifice a piece of his soul. From that moment on, part of him no longer belonged to himself. But in exchange, the dream realm fed him endless energy until its collapse. Regardless of whether died within the dream realm or emerged victorious, he would eventually return most of the stolen power. Even so, the burst of strength granted was overwhelming. As he accepted the pact, the light, the silhouette, everything disappeared. The dream realm's sensations returned to him in full. The warmth, the breath of the wind, the distant aura of, and the towering presence of the dragon. His eyes opened. A glowing-shaped sigil shimmered briefly on his brow. There was no fatigue, no pain, only power, overflowing, immense, alive. Let's finish this. Watching from a distance, saw it all. The man who had been struck down now stood revived, stronger than before. That kind of cursed energy, only a few possessed it. A heavenly calamity. No time to hesitate. The massive dragon charged once more, deceptively fast for its size. Clenched his fist and struck. The world trembled. The collision warped the air. The dragon's body reeled backward, then roared, wings shredded and body bruised, but still ready to fight. Mist and crackling lightning gathered behind it now, the full fury of the heavenly calamity descending again. A domain expansion, 10 directions annihilation. A black barrier dropped like a guillotine, swallowing the dragon and all within. Elsewhere stood atop a broken stone ledge, watching from afar. He saw struggling and distant clash growing more chaotic. He could kill them for power, scoffed, but he threw it away for justice. How idiotic. Yet the scorn faded. A quiet thought crept in, was that really so wrong? Had been a failure once, trapped in mediocrity, crushed under life. That was before the dream realm whispered to him in sleep, offering a shot at glory, a way to matter. All he had to do was take it. But then came a boy who, even in this cursed world, chose to save others, who promised to protect even people like if they repented. At first had only surrendered to avoid death. He planned to strike back later. Yet never gave up on saving the weak. The group grew, the hope grew. And somehow so did's guilt. When did my dream die? Now watching fight, something stirred within him. 2 voices screamed in his head. One urged him to flee, take power, kill, survive. He could be a hero or a devil later. The other voice whispered, this is your dream too, isn't it worth fighting for again? Finally silenced them both. With gritted teeth, he made his choice. I'll do what I can, the rest is up to the gods. Gods don't exist in the world. There are only sorcerers and curses who take on those names because of their power. Had never prayed to gods, especially not now. He now evolved through his newly modified form, pushed them into a corner. The trio had stopped trying to fight him up close. His technique was too dangerous. Instead, they fought smart. His reverse cursed technique kept their wounds in check, but even that wouldn't last forever. A patient and calculating was simply wearing them down. He didn't need to rush, he only needed time. Then, as if fate cracked open, heard it. A whisper. A voice buried beneath the chaos calling to him. He focused and recognized it, a survivor from their group, one whose technique was based on sound manipulation, not but similar in its own way, harmless in combat until now. His face darkened, the voice had told him something urgent. Noticed instantly, what is it? Hesitated, then spoke. One of the survivors is offering to give up their life to transfer their cursed energy to us. Went silent. If that worked. If we do this, said, only one of us can go, either you or Maki, I'll hold off. Maki stepped forward without hesitation, I'll do it. No, cut in, you have heavenly restriction, you can't gain a cursed technique from this. I might, he added quietly, be able to awaken an inherited technique. A sensei once told me it was possible, you. Makian wanted to speak, but's follow-up attack came too quickly. With no time to spare and surged forward and only one line echoed behind them. I can only hold him off for a bit, go. Met Maki's eyes with unwavering resolve. Maki, leave this to me, I'm ready. Without wasting another second, he turned and sprinted away. Noticed the movement immediately. His first instinct was to stop whatever was planning, but just as he moved to pursue, in her most formidable form, blocked his paths. Narrowed his eyes, as enclosed in changed course midair, attempting to bypass them. Was quick to intercept, but when he saw the sly grin tugging its mutated face, he realized too late it was a trap. Suddenly twisted in midair, 2 bladed arms lashed out, aiming straight for his abdomen. A direct hit would mean not just injury, but the deadly effect of idle transfiguration. You won't lay a finger on. Roared, activating her berserk state. Her massive hands clamped down on his arms mid-strike. The force of her grip halted momentarily. It gave just enough time to dodge and regroup. But didn't attempt to break free. Instead, he spun his arms rapidly like drills. The blades tore through flesh in an instant. It shrieked as pieces of her shredded hands flew through the air. Flinched, his heart dropping, but he knew she would recover. Still, he couldn't afford to be reckless. He and, enhanced by the Dream Realm and Maki's support, could hold off for now, but not forever. His expression sharpened. Why did suddenly run off? He's not the type to abandon allies. That quiet exchange earlier, it must been about gaining power. He began calculating, thinking like, then it hit him. The survivors. Smirked, so you're going to drain power from those you saved? How heroic. Turning his gaze back to, he sneered. Another excuse for justice, I suppose. All right, let's see if comes back first, or if I kill you first. A domain expansion, self-embodiment of perfection. As domains surged into being. Didn't counter immediately. Instead, he activated a simple domain while Maki, immune to cursed techniques, slipped out of the domain's boundary with careful precision. Inside the domain, grinned, his grotesque face twisting wider. He evolved once more, layering enhancements onto his already monstrous form. His body grew larger, denser. New arms sprouted from his ribs. His face split into more eyes, each one twitching, scanning. He adapted organs for electricity, flight, and water breathing, tailoring himself even further into an apex predator. Had no way to stop it. All he could do was stall and hope that would return soon before they fell apart completely. And elsewhere, you stood before the survivors. The look in their eyes was both familiar and foreign. Then a voice rose from the group, from someone unremarkable among them. Don't carry this alone, we talked it over. Thanks to Saidia, we all saw what you've done, now it's our turn. Followed the voice's gesture, stood there visibly uncomfortable. I'm just doing this to survive, muttered. It's not a big deal if you kill us a few times, beats getting hunted to death. He crossed his arms, avoiding gaze. This is a loan, you'll repay me later. And despite the sarcasm, was the first to step forward. Start with me, let's get this over with. A short blade was pressed into his hands by someone nearby. To an outsider, the scene would look like cold-blooded murder. But's hands trembled, unable to move. Noticed too slow, he snapped. Grabbing's wrist, he shoved the blade into his own chest. Pain flickered across his face, then he slumped to the ground, disappearing into light. One by one, the others followed. A young boy, smiling brightly, stepped up. Just rebalancing the stats in a game, don't overthink it, be seeing you. He plunged the knife into himself, just as had. Like a ritual, they came forward, again and again, dying, reviving, then dying once more. Each sacrifice transferred a fraction of their power to. His strength rose steadily, but what he truly sought was something else, an awakening. Had never possessed an inherited technique. He was always seen as someone with strong cursed energy, but no innate technique. But miracles weren't foreign to the world of. The Dream Realm had made the impossible possible. Sensei once told him, his technique circuit might left traces in his body after all that time they shared one vessel. It was a fragile hope until now. This was his one chance. He'd try to awaken it for himself, for Maki, for to kill. After dozens of deaths and rebirths, the energy flow began to slow. The transfer had reached its limit. Lowered the knife and closed his eyes. A long moment passed. Then his eyes snapped open. And the others stared tense. Exhaled, then smiled. Go, your friends are running out of time. He bowed deeply, thank you all of you. Then he turned and ran. By the time returned, his condition had worsened. He had lost the domain clash and was forced into technique burnout. Although his reverse cursed technique kept him alive, he was no longer at full strength. Maki had taken his place with, but even together they were being pushed to the edge. Had been struck by idle transfiguration, and some of his energy was permanently altered. Then, as eyes twitched, he sensed the strange new energy radiating from his body. His voice boomed as he charged. His fury didn't cloud his focus, it honed it. He grinned and sprang forward, arms transformed into blades. Let's end this. But the next instant, his body split apart, cleanly, swiftly, and fatally. Only his horrified expression remained. Reeled, torn apart by an invisible force, his mind spun in confusion. He hadn't even seen the attack, and yet he'd been shredded into several irregular fragments. Fortunately, his brain and other key structures remained intact. This kind of injury was still within the range of what idle transfiguration could repair. But as he began reconstructing himself, noticed something was wrong. His technique was being resisted. The slashes hadn't just torn apart his flesh, they had damaged his very soul. Blood dripped from the jagged rents in his body as staggered to his feet. He glared at, a twisted expression flickering across his face. Stood still, his posture calm, unflinching. Evil extermination, he said quietly. A technique disclosure. His eyes widened, had awakened a cursed technique. There was no other explanation for how he'd been shredded so cleanly the moment returned. And Maki exchanged glances, each silently affirming the same realization. So Sensei's theory was right, murmured. Maki, still locked in the battle, asked dryly, what does technique have to do with that blindfolded idiot? Before could answer, spoke again. Sensei once told me that because resided in my body, his presence might leave behind the imprint of a technique. He looked down at his hands he once cursed for being vessels of a monster he despised. Consider this your rent. The thought flashed through his mind as he raised his gaze to meets again. My technique, like the name says, targets malice. Anyone with hostile intent toward me will be struck by invisible slashes. The more hatred or killing intent they have, the more intense the effect. He gave a faint smile. So, just how badly do you want to kill me? I said nothing. The condition was deceptively simple. If you harbored no malice, you wouldn't be harmed. But for someone who overflowed with cruelty and sadism, suppressing malice was almost impossible. Even beasts acted with primal hostility toward prey. It was their nature. Even if I become a creature that acts only on instinct, I'll still feel that desire to kill. Worse yet, the technique was rooted in lineage. His mutated body hadn't stood a chance, it had been cleanly sliced apart. I need to adapt. Changes began within his body, especially his brain. He altered his emotional centers, attempting to sever his malice toward altogether. Though still appearing human, now functioned more like a cold, detached machine, a predator without hatred, only purpose. He lunged toward once more. Raised his hand. Midair sensed something. He plunged his arm into the ground and shifted form, but not fast enough. A gash appeared on his side. More invisible slashes followed, dodged erratically but still took hit after hit. He charged forward regardless, only to be met by his fist. A clean punch landed in his gut, his body bending violently from the impact. He spat blood, barely holding himself together. Then, sharp bone spurs erupted from the stumps of his broken arms, aiming to pierce at close range. You've dulled your emotions, but I can still feel it, said calmly. You still want me dead. Evil extermination. Another wave of slashes surged around. He could barely react. His only clues were faint traces of cursed energy and instinctual danger responses. The bone spurs shattered in midair before they reached their target. Anticipating this, quickly altered his form again. His body inflated grotesquely, growing over 3 meters tall, balloon-like and unstable. I eyed him warily. If I punch that, it'll explode. So he didn't. He leapt backward and focused his energy. A slash. A blade of cursed energy ripped through the air and struck. A boom. Burst apart not in a shower of flesh, but in a storm of hard, needle-like projectiles. The air filled with lethal spikes moving at deadly speed. Get down, shouted. Manifested beside, firing a blast of cursed energy that cleared much of the oncoming shrapnel. Scan the debris. His true form had hidden itself behind the scattered remnants, already preparing his next move. Evil extermination. He extended both palms, then flipped them and clenched his fists. A wall of invisible slashes formed in front of him. The incoming spikes shattered meters away, unable to reach him. But didn't stop there. He redirected the slashes to surge outward again, enveloping his position in a net of invisible blades. A domain expansion, self-embodiment of perfection. His mouth opened wide, within it tiny hands finished weaving the formation signs. The domain reemerged, swallowing both and. Thankfully, this was still the dream realm. In reality, wouldn't have the stamina to cast domain expansion this many times in one day. But the moment he activated his domain, regained his emotions and his malicious intent. Inside the pitch-black barrier, conjured massive cursed energy hands to defend himself from the slashes. The wall of invisible blades collided with these hands, buying the briefest moment to retaliate. Can you use simple domain? Sneered. He layered idle transfiguration onto the summoned hands. As suspected, hadn't yet learned the technique to neutralize a domain's effects. If even one of those hands touched him, the technique would activate instantly. A guaranteed hit. A domain expansion. His voice rang out as he unleashed his own domain to counters. The clash of domains pulled into space, neutralizing sure-hit advantage. Maki, immune to techniques, might have been able to intervene from outside, but she couldn't break the domain walls. Could. Still had been prepared. You've already died several times, this time will be no different. The domains collided, its expansion barely held, shielding for a few fleeting seconds. But he knew it wouldn't last. I turned to his face tense. What I'm about to ask may be too much, but it's the only option we have. He paused, then nodded with conviction. I'm going to expand my domain again soon. Watch carefully. Study every motion. If you can awaken your own domain, even a crude one, that might be enough to turn this around. Don't panic, just focus. I believe in you. His domain shattered. As expected, had the upper hand. Collapsed into technique burnout, his energy flickering. Reverse cursed technique target brain. His vision swam, but he didn't stop. Hand signs formed slowly, deliberately. Domain expansion, all-encompassing pure land, limitless white light clashed against an abyss of endless black. In simple terms, technique burnout occurs when a domain clash ends in failure. The losing sorcerer becomes forcibly severed from their cursed technique output. Like an overloaded circuit, the powerful energy sustaining a domain collapses, short-circuiting the caster's control over their innate technique. While a sorcerer can still manipulate raw cursed energy in this state, using their technique becomes nearly impossible. And since domain expansion is inherently linked to one's technique, attempting it during burnout is virtually unthinkable. But that expectation... His secret, reverse cursed technique. A sorcerer's inherited technique is imprinted on a specific region of the brain. Once that region burns out, a natural recovery period is typically needed before reuse, but found another method, a riskier one. Destroy the burned-out part of the brain, then immediately regenerate it with reverse cursed technique. The process is as dangerous as it sounds. The brain isn't just the source of technique output, it's the seat of consciousness. Any miscalculation could lead to permanent damage or death. No ordinary sorcerer would ever attempt such a thing, but wasn't just anyone, and in this dream realm, he was willing to gamble everything. His goal wasn't to overpower in a domain clash, it was to show the path. If could witness domain expansion firsthand, he might awaken it himself, even in this desperate moment. He even understood how slim that chance was, but still it wasn't zero. Strictly speaking, mastering domain expansion doesn't rely solely on talent. Some train into it over time. Others, like find enlightenment in the heat of battle. Even whose genius was unmatched had to refine his domain over time. Atu had gradually learned it through study and repetition, and now placed all hope on having the same kind of breakthrough. Oh, you must succeed. The brilliant domain light collapsed completely, darkness swallowed it whole. His domain shattered again, and he turned his gaze toward. He had pushed his body to the brink. If he couldn't regenerate his brain again, death or permanent loss of his technique would be the end result. This was his last chance. Black hands made of cursed energy surged toward and ready to tear them apart. But wasn't looking at them. His gaze lingered on his trembling body on Maki, who had died several times already, holding off and on, locked in a brutal fight in the distance. He thought of the former delinquent who had first proposed this desperate tactic. He thought of every person who had fallen with purpose, smiles etched on their faces. My efforts weren't in vain. The thought grounded him. A strange sensation settled into his body, foreign but not unwelcome, as if he'd done this before. Raised his hands. 10 fingers extended, palms tilted inward, fingertips pointing skyward. The pinkies and thumbs met at the base, forming the shape of a blooming lotus flower. His body moved with precision, even as his mind swam with disbelief. A domain expansion, severance of karma, ignorance. Darkness evaporated like morning mist under sunlight. The approaching cursed energy hands instantly shattered, disintegrating into base particles of energy. A new domain had emerged, terrifying, hellish. The earth beneath turned red and soft, soaked in blood. Thousands of blades stood embedded in the ground. Half-buried bones surrounded him, non-human creatures of all shapes and sizes, severed and dismembered. All cut down by blades. This was karmic punishment for those tainted by evil thoughts, a sacred place of execution. At least that was what saw. The domain looked entirely different. A heavenly palace with glistening jade ponds, golden lotuses blooming in silence, distant skis painted in soft hues, mist curling over mountaintops. A paradise. Success, gasped. Had done it, his domain was holding its own against. Oh, we can win. Had never felt more alive. His technique, now by the domain, gave him perfect control of the battlefield. But there was no time to revel in it. Oh, he needed to end this. I'm going to lose. Stared blankly at the sight before him. First awakened a technique, then he launched a domain expansion, and now this domain directly countered. It was over. And yet refused to believe was a genius. No, he wasn't. A genius isn't luck, whispered. It's consistency, it's control. He had studied countless geniuses, the so-called divine child who changed the very balance of power in the world, who hunted them relentlessly, forcing them into hiding, and others, cursed and human alike. But now, standing at the edge of death, had to face a bitter truth. It had to be. Fate. His domain began to shatter, lines of cracks forming in a crisscross pattern, and then collapse. Dropped into the execution field. His eyes locked onto him. His malice flared in his vision like a blazing torch, undeniable, irredeemable. Sinners like this belonged in hell. Said, smiled, twisted as always. But had long known couldn't be redeemed. He wasn't just evil, he was the embodiment of humanity's fear of itself. A tumor, one that had to be cut away. Go to hell. Invisible slashes filled the domain, crashing down all at once. Howled, immediately launching a counterattack. A idle transfiguration surged through his flesh. One final transformation. Head sprouted, one from his shoulder, another from his chest. More arms burst from his torso, and his limbs grew thick, malformed. A tail split from his spine. Tentacles writhed over his body, and what remained of his face twisted beyond recognition. Pale black flames burned from his skin, faint and flickering, but deadly. Even touching those flames would mean death. They distorted the soul itself. Roared. He dashed at flames trailing like shadows, his final gambit. Even if he landed no more attacks, his body would soon collapse. This suicidal form could only last a few seconds. But he never reached. 3 heads, then limbs, then torso, all dismembered in midair by slashes he couldn't see. His body scattered along the ground in dozens of pieces. You won't win, he hissed, even as his smile faded. Remained still. He raised his hands one last time, then brought them together. His remains shattered again, no longer flesh, no longer cursed, just dust. Remains faded from the ground, the damage inflicted far greater than anticipated. Death in the dream realm carried more weight than elsewhere and was feeling the consequences. Once his fragmented body had completely vanished, reappeared, standing in the same location. He made no attempt to respawn elsewhere. There was no point. Had awakened his technique. He had mastered domain expansion. Had already lost once, and now with teaming up with, it was only a matter of time before they defeated. At that point, their momentum would be unstoppable. Even if tried to restore his strength by attacking others, it was too late. After all, this new rule system in the dream realm was his doing. I lost. He smiled. Standing motionless before didn't look like someone who had just been defeated. His smile remained unsettlingly calm. Stepped forward, ready to question him further, when his voice rang out urgently from behind. Leave him, go help. Snapping back to reality, understood. His initial plan had been to stall them, and he was still trying to. Narrowed his gaze, I'll give you one chance. Evil extermination. His technique erupted once more, delivering one final strike without hesitation. Didn't even look back. He turned and sprinted toward. It's about time. His body crumbled again, pieces scattering like dust. Final moment. Reality level has reached maximum, mode activated. Specific rules are as follows. The familiar detached voice echoed through the dream realm, but this time everyone paid closer attention. The words mode carried weight unlike anything before. Rewind time. When was reborn by the dream realm's power, he returned stronger than ever. His technique had always given him heightened sensitivity to vibration. Before, he could detect a mosquito's wing beat from hundreds of meters away. He could choose targets through these vibrations, then affect them directly using his technique, creating tremors or even attacking from range. Now, after his rebirth, he had transcended that foundation. He could feel everything. This level of sensory mastery was intoxicating. Domain expansion, 10 directions annihilation. Immediately upon facing, activated his domain. The dark barrier encased both and the massive form of heavenly calamity. The scenery was familiar, but the power behind it was very different. Sensed it too, cursed energy was boiling, feral, unrestrained. Recognizing the danger, decided not to hold back. The dragon in the sky exhaled deeply, releasing clouds and mist. These vaporous clouds wrapped around its serpentine body as flashes of black lightning danced through them. Then the dragon ignited. Flames licked across its entire length. Wreathed in cloud, lightning, and fire, it spiraled downward, charging at. Met the charge with eerie calm. He inhaled, pulled his fist to his waist, and then launched a single punch. Cursed energy condensed sharply, bursting outward like an explosion. The resulting shockwave warped the air like heat over asphalt. A space distorted. Reality trembled. Black fractures appeared across the domain. And then shatter. His domain broke, but not from external pressure. He shattered it himself. His technique had pushed the strike to its upper limit. Then he fused the explosive energy of the domain's self-destruction into the impact. This was the essence of 10 Directions annihilation. Destruction wasn't about striking individual targets, it was about reducing the entire battlefield to rubble. Even his own domain was just a detonator. That one punch spread out like a storm, covering hundreds of meters. Buildings, roads, scenery, all were reduced to dust in the wake of vibrating destruction. Even the massive dragon was torn apart in midair. Its water vapor and lightning scattered like smoke, dissolving into the air. Batted away the remaining lightning effortlessly, then paused. A flicker of movement. It's not over yet. His voice came from the shadows above. The storm of scattered shadows in the air surged and reformed, swirling rapidly. A winding shape took form, no longer concrete but still massive. Heavenly calamity had returned, rebuilt entirely from shadows. Its massive jaw opened wide, fangs formed from shadow blades descending toward like guillotine teeth. Moved instantly, twisting in midair and delivering a powerful kick. It didn't stop the beast entirely, but it disrupted the attack just long enough to avoid a lethal blow. Now I am the master of this world. Closed his eyes and punched the air. The dream realm warped. Lines rippled outward from his fist, fracturing the sky like a broken mirror. Heavenly calamity's massive maw exploded on impact, shadowy fluids splashing outward like ink in water. But even as they splashed, they tried to return, regenerating in real time. Didn't let up another punch. The sky fractured again, deeper this time. Behind the cracks was only darkness, pure void. The dragon tried to escape but failed. It shattered. Its body collapsed into a rain of shadow that drifted down like black snow. I stood still in the rain, listening. He tilted his head slightly as the familiar voice echoed again. The dream realm had just announced the activation of mode. Rules, this doesn't look good for you, does it? He smirked. The moment of fate is here. If I kill you, who's left to stop me? There's no escape now, he added. Only one of us walks away. Raised his hands, calm as ever. You're right, he replied. I have my own reasons to return to reality, and as for you. A narrow shadow slid from behind, twisting through the air like a snake. It was small, no longer the towering beast it once was, but its form was unmistakable. Scales, twin horns, 4 limbs. A heavenly calamity. Still alive. It had used rabbit escape to avoid total annihilation. Though weakened, it survived. Would need time and energy to restore it to full size, but even now it could fight. Reality level increased again. This must be the final phase, murmured. The last increase made domain expansion possible, so this time. He extended one hand. Let's see what comes next. Then under his breath he began to chant, 8-handled sword divergent divine general. As began the chant, the shadows in front of him surged upward. From within the mass, a single blade pierced through, shimmering with ominous energy. The arm attached to it followed, and it became clear the weapon wasn't being held. It was fused to the user as if both were born as one. Then its head emerged. Jagged white teeth filled its oversized mouth. No eyes, no nose, just a monstrous maw that dominated most of its face. Above it, in place of eyes, 2 wing-like appendages flared outward. The final and most dangerous of the 10 shadows technique had fully taken form. It stood tall, humanoid in structure, with a bare upper body and shadow-cloaked lower half that flickered in and out of existence. From behind its head extended a tail-like appendage, but the most menacing feature hovered above the Dharma wheel, suspended in the air like a halo of death. The wheel resembled a chariot wheel with 8 spokes, each tipped with a sphere. Immediately backed away, he hadn't mastered, this was still a subjugation ritual. Unlike other 10 shadows, ritual had one twisted rule: if the summoner couldn't handle it alone, others could be dragged in. Which meant was indiscriminate in its rampage. Dodged faster than, the miniature heavenly calamity wrapped around him expanded in an instant, transforming into a massive serpentine dragon that carried him far from the danger zone. With no target left in front of it, naturally turned its attention to. The strange charged forward. Despite its odd appearance and lack of overwhelming aura, felt a rare chill of unease. But there was no time to reflect, the only answer was destruction. One punch to shatter the void. His technique roared to life. The sheer force crushed the ground in his path, invisible vibrations tore through the air and raced toward. A heavenly calamity. The dragon responded instantly. Just as the attack neared, the massive form of heavenly calamity intercepted, coiling midair to take the brunt of the force. Its tail, crackling with black thunder, twisted as it lashed out, absorbing the shockwave. Had no choice, he couldn't risk being obliterated on first contact. Because true ability was dangerous, it adapted. Each time it endured a technique, it learned to counter and nullify it. And's technique, though powerful, lacked diversity. If survived a few exchanges, he'd become completely immune. But to adapt had to survive the first blow. That's why let heavenly calamity intervenes. The dragon's tail shattered upon impact, the ripple collapsing the space it touched, but the damage had been done, it blocked enough. It took the remaining force directly. Its body twisted grotesquely under the pressure but wasn't destroyed. The Dharma wheel turned. Its injuries began to regenerate instantly, in moments stood restored. It raised its blade and swung toward heavenly calamity, who dodged in time, then redirected, charging toward again. Frowned. Still uncertain of what was planning, he responded the only way he knew: another punch. As blade descended, and's fist rose to meet it. The strike landed, the void groaned, yet the wasn't obliterated. Staggered, parts of its body twisted and deformed, but it endured, and that's when realized something had changed. His first attack had nearly destroyed it. This one, direct and unrestrained, did far less damage. Something wasn't right. A tremor of unease passed through him. That can't be. He hadn't held back, it was adapting, that was the only explanation. The strike pushed the back, dragging a trench in the ground, but it recovered, and once again the Dharma wheel spun. This time lunged, sword raised high, dodged by a hair's breadth. The weapon slammed into the ground with the force of a wrecking ball, sending tremors through the battlefield. Gathered cursed energy and retaliated. His fist collided with its giant hand. The impact alone sent shockwaves rippling outward, splitting the ground. Still only staggered slightly. As jaw tightened, its resistance is increasing, it's evolving too fast. He began to retreat, weaving through strikes while rapidly forming a ball of cursed energy. When he fired it, the impact caused a visible blast that cracks armor, but stood tall. His eyes narrowed. He fired again, same intensity, the result less damage than before. Watched in silence from the air, floating alongside the coiling heavenly calamity, his expression was unreadable. Finally understood, you're using me to make it stronger. He looked up at, almost amused. From the start, you just needed to survive the first hit. Now every time I strike, it grows stronger. Heavenly calamity remained in its shadow form, ready to block any fatal blow. His movements grew faster with each step, its reactions were sharper. Acted quickly, slamming his foot into the ground, he sent debris into the air, temporarily blocking his advance. Then, without hesitation, he charged at. You haven't fully subjugated it, that's why you won't fight, you're hiding behind it. Understood the danger, if dragged him into the fight, would turn on him too. He signaled heavenly calamity and launched into the sky to gain distance. Smirked and hurled a punch through the air. The ripples struck mid-flight. He wasn't as resilient as his. Before the full impact could land, heavenly calamity detached and responded with a burst of lightning, engulfing and giving the opening he needed to escape. But wasn't idle. As dealt with the dragon, the monstrous descended from behind, swinging its sword in a wide arc. It didn't care who it hit. A true instrument of destruction. Grinned. Trying to run, that's fine. He turned to face both enemies. Then his cursed energy spiked again. Domain expansion. 10 directions annihilation suddenly activated his domain expansion at a precise moment, one that would trap both and heavenly calamity inside but leave outside its range. Given the current distance between them, his domain wouldn't collide with even if activated immediately. His plan was to destroy in one decisive blow using his domain-enhanced technique. And he was right, his initial action of shielding had revealed a weakness. His retreat had shown that still untamed would attack indiscriminately, seized upon both of these vulnerabilities. In mere seconds, he had devised a solution. His reaction speed was razor-sharp. As his domain unfolded, successfully sealing both inside, raised his fist, his technique poised to obliterate everything. But what followed caught him completely off guard. Who should have been far outside the domain suddenly emerged from within it. Shadows surged around him like a spring erupting. His hands crossed in the medicine Buddha Mudra, a binding gesture. A domain expansion, Chimera Shadow Gardens. There was no time to dwell on how had entered. Their domains had expanded almost simultaneously and now clashed against one another. His overwhelming advantage halted. Inside, he hesitated just briefly. With his interference, was no longer certain his punch could destroy in a single strike. However, was also approaching his limits. Summoning heavenly calamity through technique amplification had already taxed him. Attempting a domain expansion risked burnout. But 10 Shadows technique was unique. Summoning and maintaining were two distinct actions. Even if burnout occurred, it wouldn't dispel his, that gave him just enough confidence. He had re-entered the domain to protect, who hadn't yet fully adapted from his devastating blow. The attack that had previously scattered even heavenly calamity was still vivid in his mind. Thankfully, his domain held. Darkness bled from every corner, forming solid shadow structures. Shadow buildings, vague and shifting, rose like a kingdom forged from night. Within this domain, heavenly calamity was in its element. Like a dragon in deep ocean waters, its every movement stirred resonance across the shadows. As long as domain remained intact, heavenly calamity could not be destroyed. Gritted his teeth, his body trembled under the strain, he only needed to endure a little longer. Within the shadows, heavenly calamity surged forward, disappearing into the ground, only to emerge directly before. It dodged attacks deliberately, denying it the opportunity to adapt. Back with, his uncertainty didn't show on the outside, his resolve remained unbroken. His teleportation had rendered separation tactics useless, so there was only one option left: trust in his strength. Let his fist carry the final verdict. 10 directions annihilation. His domain began to collapse, centered around his raised fist, space twisted and unraveled. The destruction rippled outward like an imploding sun. His domain also began to fracture under the pressure. Blood streamed from his mouth and nose. The mental toll was extreme. He used his last reserves to keep Heavenly Calamity active. The dragon rushed toward the collapsing center once more, its lightning-charged body striking through the rupturing domain. The collision between's void-destroying blow and the thunder-charged Heavenly Calamity caused a terrifying shockwave. Soil vaporized, houses shattered, and glass exploded even in distant structures. A retrieve. Gave the command. Heavenly Calamity vanished instantly, its massive body pulled back into the shadows. Now stood alone in the path of full-powered punch. A rhythm of the void. Grinned through blood-stained teeth. Despite nearly killing himself with this final enhancement he pushed through, he slammed his fist forward. Raised its blade. A crack. The sword shattered inch by inch before disintegrating into shadowy dust. The shockwave twisted its body violently, tearing it apart despite its adaptations. A monstrous roar echoed. The earth collapsed, leaving behind a massive crater as if something had taken a giant bite out of the world. When the dust cleared, was gone. Landed, having been launched through the air by, he stared at, now bleeding and barely standing. Narrowed his eyes. He understood, had only landed one attack, but it had been decisive. Frowned, blood pooled at his chest and abdomen. The reverse cursed technique eluded him, but the wound hadn't struck his heart. He wouldn't die immediately. The dream realm's residual energy might keep him alive. Still, the tide had turned. Although his voice broke the silence. I just awakened my technique. It delivers invisible slashes to anyone who bears ill will toward me. The stronger their hatred, the deeper the cut. I processed his words. Despite the severity of the slash, had only been struck once. That meant he didn't actually hate them all that much. Just then, a low hum interrupted their thoughts. A buzz. All three turned toward the epicenter of the crater. There, amidst the smoke and ruin, something glowed faintly. The Dharma wheel's ominous crown was still spinning, was not completely destroyed. Deep within the impact crater, its Dharma wheel slowly turned. A swirling shadow erupted from the ground, rapidly growing in size until its towering form reemerged, the ominous wheel still spinning atop its head. His final blow, though enhanced, had been interrupted by strike, failing to finish the job. Be careful. Shouted, as wasn't a participant in the subjugation ritual, could target him without restraint. The consequences of that were unpredictable and dangerous. Although unsure of the specifics, understood the gravity of his tone. He immediately retreated, maintaining distance as instructed. As form reconstructed with eerie smoothness, and once complete, it turned its focus toward the closest target. In an instant, its colossal body vanished from sight. This incredible speed was one it had already adapted through earlier exchanges. A massive blade sliced through the air toward, the force from the swing already brushing his face. Suddenly, serrated shadow fangs materialized in the air. A gaping maw clamped down on sword, halting its path, dropped into his shadow just in time. Heavenly Calamity, utilizing Tiger Funeral, intercepted for a moment before retreating. Blade swung through empty air as slipped away. I need to make it change targets. If adapts to shadow movement, I'm done. Heavenly Calamity arrived beside, encasing him in a swirling vortex of shadow. It lifted him into flight, allowing him to move rapidly while evading wrath. Elsewhere, now somewhat recovered from his attack, observed the situation. He immediately understood what was attempting. That it survived even that final strike, he knew what that meant. Maybe I can't bite it anymore. Narrowed his eyes at who was fast approaching. Throwing a punch to block his path, muttered with a faint sigh. If I remember right, those special grade sorcerers, you guys were before, yeah. Before entering the dream realm, had cared little for the official world of sorcerers. They seemed like performative showmen far removed from the violence he knew, but once inside, everything changed. Power was earned through carnage. That's how he survived, that's how he rose. He eventually encountered who extended a false hand of friendship, never trusted him. Even when taught him about domains, he knew he was being used. Still, he went along with it. Now had fallen and stood on the edge himself. He'd sacrificed so much, and it still wasn't enough. Compared to those guys, where do you stand? Pose the question while battling heavenly calamity. Both fighters instinctively dodged incoming attacks, though the speed had noticeably increased. As punches landed like breezes on useless, he knew his time was almost up. And after a moment's thought, replied honestly, "I'm strong now, but I'm nowhere near the top." He was confident in his growth. He could subjugate barely, but against or even would be eradicated the moment it appeared. Still grounded, couldn't maneuver midair like, closed in again. He heard the roar of displaced wind behind him and instinctively punched back. This time caught his fist effortlessly. No impact, no damage. With a cold gleam in its eyes, blade flashed. His right arm was severed at the shoulder. If he hadn't twisted just in time, it would have been worse. The arm dropped, advanced. Blood gushing, ducked desperately under blow after blow. Pain was muted. He was too close to death to feel it. Am I going to die here? A strange calm settled over him, not regret, not fear, just stillness. Then something flickered in his gaze. If I'm going to die, I want to burn as bright as I can. Lunged forward again, this time it gripped and raised its blade. Smiled. Then his face cracked like porcelain. His shattered cheek revealed not muscle or bone, but pure, radiant light. A blast of invisible energy surged from his body, blasting backward. The grip released. With his only remaining arm struck in the abdomen. The was actually sent flying. A massive crater opened in its gut. The cost's last arm crumbled and more cracks spread across his body. Light leaked from him like a dying star. Names remember it. Stood silently atop a ruined structure, watching suicidal charge. Whatever power he'd unleashed, it was at terrible cost. What a waste. You had real talent, if only you'd met sooner. But then paused. If the dream realm never happened, wouldn't have awakened his technique at all. Fall. Gestured downward. From the sky, heavenly calamity appeared, its fangs bared, its throat glowing with a surging black-blue orb. Using Bull Run, it accelerated at terrifying speed. And collided with, but this time didn't budge. It withstood the blow, then drove its blade straight through his chest. Looked up. A shadow loomed overhead. He smiled, half his face gone. And it's over. The dragon shadow descended. A roar like a god's fury shook the heavens. Smoke and dust swallowed the impact zone. A heavenly calamity beat its wings, dispersing the clouds. At the center, nothing remained, no. Only fatting shadows, ashes of two monsters. The subjugation ritual had failed. The dragon shadow dissipated. Drained and barely conscious, fell from the ruins. When awoke, he saw and several survivors around him. They were at the designated safe zone. He realized immediately something had changed. Originally, leaving the dream realm required only energy and reaching this place. But during the battle, new rules had been announced. A clause. Now escape required a voluntary sacrifice. One person had to die. I'll do it. Sat up resolve in his voice. This condition was brutal. Still, he couldn't risk letting remain here longer. Stop. Approached, Maki standing nearby, raised a brow. If you die, what about your sister? What about San, Sensei, everyone else? You think they can't stop a curse out there? looked at his expression clear. As long as my sister's safe, that's enough. Sorcerers die anyway, dying for someone I love is worth it. Maki scowled, muttering, "Oh, insane." Then someone else stepped forward. Recognized him, the man who had helped defeat. Let me do it." Walked calmly toward them, shrugging like it was no big deal. What? Why the shocked faces? He looked at with a strange fondness. I've done plenty of awful things, not proud of them, deserved to die long ago. He sighed. But when I entered this place, I met you, reminded me of who I used to be, of who I should been. He laughed, searching for a cigarette that wasn't there. There are people outside waiting for you to save them, right? Let me atone, you do what I couldn't. He patted his shoulder. Can you carry my share? Opened his mouth, reached out. But's body had already begun fatting. His last words echoed like a promise. I'll leave it to you. Bowed his head. Thank you, I'll carry it, Tokyo barriers. The decisive day had arrived, would be confronted. Within the Tokyo barrier, the battlefield had already been swept clean. The ancient sorcerers were either dead or sealed, and the more dangerous curses had been dealt with by elite teams. Only clusters of low-grade curses remained, vermin too numerous and scattered to eliminate swiftly. Beyond that, the city was a deserted, shattered shell of itself. And today, it would welcome the final battles. At precisely 12:00 p.m., entered the barrier alongside. Only the two of them went in. Remained behind, stationed as a countermeasure in case the enemy had prepared a trap. From the top of Tokyo Tower, still wearing Spotty looked down over the hollow cityscape. Flanking him stood, possessing Spotty, and the ever-loyal servant who had followed since the era. They're here, my lord, said calmly. Followed his gaze downward and spotted the two figures. A voice emerged from the shadows behind them. Then I wish you luck in battles. Stepped forward, smiling. He'd already shared his full plan with who, despite his arrogance, had accepted it. He might be proud, but he wasn't a fool. The idea suited him. Took a step forward, putting space between them. A grin split across his four-eyed face. A time to loosen up a bit. With that, he leapt off the tower. The wind howled around him as he fell. His body suddenly became enveloped in a black, liquid-like substance. In a blink, it into two pairs of pitch-black wings. With a powerful flap, she took to the sky, following's descent. I'll hold you so the landing is smoother, she offered sweetly. Didn't even glance at her. No need. He crashed into the pavement like a meteor. The resulting crater boomed through the street. Unscathed, stepped through the debris, brushing the dust off with a wave of his hand. He looked toward the approaching figures and smirked. Right on time. Atop Tokyo Tower and remained. The latter shot a cold glare toward the former. Shrugged. Don't look at me like that. You'd be dead the moment you joined the fight. You know his technique, those two were chosen specifically because of their incarnated bodies. We played our part, now sit back and watch. His expression hardened, he didn't respond, but the icy glint in his eyes sharpened. He knew history, if the plan failed, would have to be avenged. Turned his gaze away, ignoring completely. Crouched at the edge, peering toward the battlefield. You are the king of curses, you'll win, right? I'd hate to wait another 1,000 years. Approached. The face once belonging to now twisted with sadistic madness, four eyes glaring, cursed markings etched across his skin. So ugly. His quiet remark struck a nerve in who descended with an offended scowl. Blind brat, these features transcend humanity. How could you low-level insects comprehend true magnificence? She landed, clad in black armor that shimmered like a polished shell, strangely reminiscent of an insect's exoskeleton. As expression darkened, he raised a finger to his lips. Don't make noise. Her wings shattered. In that brief moment, hadn't even realized what had happened. A dismantle. Alert and far more experienced, reacted immediately. The moment he sensed cursed energy shift, he unleashed his cleave technique, slashing toward end. But it was too late, had already acted. The slash missed, only ripping apart the ground around, who stared in stunned silence. Now that I feel it up close, your technique really is impressive, admitted, narrowing his eyes. Didn't respond to the compliment, his gaze locked on his black armor. During the time Null state, when he tore off her wings, he had sensed substantial resistance. He'd only succeeded because of No, a cursed tool highly effective against cursed energy defenses. That armor, an alloy of some kind. He made a mental note. Beside him stepped forward. So what's the plan? You two want to just hand over those bodies, or are we going to waste time? Didn't bite, he wasn't one for banter, he'd rather let his blade do the talking. Didn't reply either. After what just happened, she wasn't about to underestimate them again. If not for her current vessel, she'd be dead already. Chuckled and took another step forward. Let's make it simple. I can't destroy this body with you standing guard, so let's fight properly. He tore off his upper robe effortlessly. If I win, the result is obvious. I'll savor this world, devour it slowly. If I lose, you've already sent people to the dream realm, haven't you? Let's let that decide it. A turn to two. I'll go. If anything unexpected happens, you'll be able to cover from the side. Scan the battlefield with 6 eyes, no tricks, not yet, he nodded. In a blink, he flashed to a nearby rooftop and fixed his gaze on Tokyo Tower. Raised his arms, curse marks glowing. Smiled slightly. Shall we? The world stilled, dust floated gently, even the breeze hushed. Then moved. Eightfold spiderweb. Unlike dismantle, which could be used repeatedly, eightfold was a power-based technique, focusing on a single devastating blow. The spiderweb variation spread his slashes in an expanding pattern. The world cracked. Explosions of pressure rang through the air, but his expression remained unchanged. Not because he hit, but because he hadn't. He'd struck something else. Chunks of shattered black armor rained down. It wasn't his body that had broken, it was armor. His construction technique, once too weak to form powerful materials, had evolved after she studied the durability of insects. She could manifest liquid metal, hardened through her cursed energy, nearly unbreakable. But even that crumbled under strike. She hadn't even activated her insect armor, yet her defensive layer was reduced to fragments, her expression twisted with rage. This is truly... The black liquid surged again. This time it built around her in seconds, forming a towering body composed of insect-like features, a grotesque fusion of antennae, plating, and claws. His gaze sharpened. Trying to look like a knight doesn't work when you resemble a bug, that's just ugly. It cackled from within the armors. What do you know of beauty? When I drench this armor in your blood, it'll be magnificent. With a sonic boom, she launched forward, moving so quickly she became a blur. But was already gone. Too slow. Time twisted. When arrived in front of, he immediately sensed something wrong. Despite being in time null state, the distortion came from the space around. It was sensitivity to abnormal fluctuations in cursed energy that had alerted him. Extended No, the blade humming with cursed energy. The moment he thrust it forward, an unexpected resistance surged against him, and in the blink of an eye, the sword's front half shattered. The break was clean, almost surgical. The fragments hung in the air, their edges catching light and revealing twisted currents of force. To his eyes, it painted a clear picture. Now resembling a grotesque monster, was surrounded by a dense, invisible net of blades. Any intrusion into this space would be met with 1,000 cuts. Even a peak-grade cursed tool like No couldn't withstand the pressure. The technique activated. Regripping his newly restored sword through cursed manipulation resumed normal speed. He wanted to see whether's technique, the web of slashing cursed energy, would continue even in real time, but as expected, movement remained unaffected. His monstrous fingers lashed towards original position and missed. His response was immediate. The black liquid metal around his body shifted into sharp weaponry, stabbing towards true location. Slipped into time null state again, narrowly avoiding the blades and retaliating with a swift slash. The same resistance greeted him. He didn't force it this time. Instead, he released his technique once more. Lunged again. Despite the manic aura, his combat instincts were honed. He wasn't merely driven by rage. This was a man who had earned his name in the blood-soaked battlefields of the era. He had noticed a spatial trap, the blade web, when it activated. His original plan had been to use his grotesque form's enhanced perception to overwhelm before he could adjust. Yet even after reviewing scarce footage of his technique, hadn't predicted this level of control. If it weren't for this body, even with that technique, you're flawed. That means you're not strong. His armor shifted again, this time abandoning defense entirely. It warped into an offensive juggernaut. The transformation left him monstrous, something no horror film could conjure. Frowned silently and shifted his gaze to the original, no longer warped by transformation, standing calmly nearby. You set a trap around him using your slashes. My technique is invisible, so you're activating and canceling yours constantly to avoid killing him too. I smiled, amused. Not quite, I'm also studying you. There are always cursed energy fluctuations before a technique, even if they're faint. Glanced at his own left hand. If he focused, he could feel his own cursed energy rise and fall. But during high-speed combat, detecting these microscopic fluctuations was almost impossible, unless you were whose 6 eyes granted unparalleled perception. And speaking of, when quickly scanned the surroundings, he realized was no longer present. He had vanished completely. Probably chasing after a guest. His eyes returned to, that could coordinate such a technique while using's body said everything. This man truly was the Curse King, the apex predator of the era. A moment passed, his gaze softened slightly in introspection. Meanwhile, the warp began to move. He now glided, no longer stomping around like a brute. With his new offensive form, he became death incarnate, closing the distance behind silently. A black blade formed from his palm, aimed directly for the back of skull. Oh, that should do it. Without turning around, muttered, and just like that's armor exploded. Chunks of black metal, once dense and nearly indestructible, shattered like brittle glass. His monstrous shell disintegrated instantly, revealing the human body underneath. The real's eyes gleamed. From his views, already faint cursed energy fluctuations had become virtually unreadable. His perception faltered, missing the rhythm entirely. With a technique like one mistake meant total failure. You changed your cursed energy output in real time. Shrugged. Didn't have a choice, micro-adjustments, what else could I do? Besides, it's not like I can kill you, right? Didn't believe him, he knew humans. Both his and his bodies were valuable to the enemy, but he didn't doubt that if pushed, would choose destruction over surrender. The resolve needed to reach the pinnacle of meant abandoning hesitation. In the end, all sorcerers are. Lifted his hands, his nails now stained black. The 2 extra eyes beneath his lower eyelids burned with anticipation. Let's really begin. Reached toward his left earlobe, retrieving the cursed tool from the mist there. He gave an apologetic smile. Sorry, you're not here right now, so I might rough your body up a bit. I'll heal you later, promise. Because in a few seconds it was going to hurt. A dismantle. A time wheel spin. The battlefield lit up with invisible slashes. vanished into time null state, appearing beside almost instantly. He could see the thin threads of slashes forming around them even though they hadn't struck yet. The cursed energy already woven through the air warned him Snet was ready. There is no. This time didn't hesitate. With both no end in hand, cursed energy flowed like a torrent. The blades howled as he forced his way through the web of slashes. The sparks danced as steel met invisible cursed lines. Time slowed for him. He could almost hear the metallic shriek echoing in his mind. With fluid control, he carved out a chaotic path toward. Blood marked his body where the stray slashes touched, but pushed forward, letting his cursed energy soften the blows. The attacks were powerful, but not fatal. He used his technique reversal to heal in real time, not even allowing his clothes to tear. He reached and struck. Without destroying's body inflicted devastating wounds. Deep slashes tore through muscle and nearly severed limbs. Blood sprayed, but his goal wasn't to kill, it was to disable. He released his technique and stood calmly, switching to his view. The moment his technique spread from his body was already moving to block, but pain exploded through him. He felt his ribs crack, his internal organs sliced before he could even react. Still, there was no panic. He analyzed the injuries, activated reverse cursed technique, and began healing himself even before fully registering the damage. His technique is absurdly well-timed. Time manipulation and blade control together, there's no clean counter. And despite the thought, wasn't discouraged. On the contrary, he was elated. His blood hadn't cooled like this in centuries. He wanted to drink it. He wanted to remember this moment. This is magnificent. His torso was still bleeding, skin split wide to expose internal organs, but only smiled wider. Then his hands came together. A darkness descended. A shrine materialized upon the blood-stained battlefield. A cursed construct of corpses and ritual, his masterpiece. A domain expansion, malevolent shrine. Stood armor gone, his divine sword returned to a mundane blade. I lost. There was no sorrow in his voice, only peace. And perhaps a hint of joy. He looked at with a soft expression. San, do you feel lonely? Hello, everyone. As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500+ novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.